Hello everyone, this is your favorite Murtid live once again. And this is the part 3 of the religion of Muhammad. Finding the truth about the religion which Muhammad gave and said that this is a religion from the one and only God. But is it? That's what we are looking at into. And for that we have our brother Lloyd, who has done extensive study in this particular area. Let's welcome him with a huge clap, big hand of applause, and a lot of roses. Brother Lloyd, welcome.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you, Adam, for having me on.
Thank you so very much for spending your time over here with all of us, and I appreciate all of your study and extensive knowledge. By the way, guys, Brother Lloyd has sent his channel link in live chat as well. Plus, if you guys do not know, his channel is in the title as well. If you click his name in the title, it will take you to his channel. This is how I have done that so that nobody will have to look for his channel. They can just simply click the name, his name in the title, and it will take the person to his channel. At the same time, Brother Lloyd has been sending his links for his study data. Those links I will put in the description of all three videos. I have not done that so far because I wanted people to understand and comprehend what Lloyd is showing rather than just trying to state things out of context. So now that it is the part 3, now I will going to put the links in the description as well for each and every one of you to go and check it out. At the same time, let's welcome some of our very own followers, Protestants believer, reasoned answer apologetics, and built for speed, and Duzur, and all of our people, Arm, and our very own Marin, who is always here. Welcome each and every one of you. God bless you all. Let's roll the ball, brother.
Right, welcome everyone. Yeah, so shall I just catch up where we left off last week, Adam?
Absolutely, sir. The mic is yours, the stage is yours.
Okay, so what feedback have you been getting from the first two episodes? Has anyone what have people been saying? Because I think their shows have been going very well.
It has been. People liked it. People were amazed by the extensive study that you have done, and yeah, I think mostly, not mostly, I think 99% we have a good response. So I think you are doing an extensive job. Some people do not like my voice, but they still like yours. So apparently, your voice and your data is far better than my voice and my data.
Well, no
Just
comment.
say good. Just say good.
No,
That's good, right?
no comment. No comment.
And
So
like, look, Protestant believer said, an astonishing work.
awesome, and thank you. Yeah, guys. So today we will continue with where we left off. I will be drawing an entire narrative, of course. So, by the way, this is my website. The website is under my name. My name is Lloyd de Jong. Right. For those who keep asking, I am South African. Right. I was born and raised in Cape Town. I live in Warsaw, Poland. So I have a war going on right next door. Right. So I obviously talk about Islam, but I talk mainly about Islamic law. So this is the area that I mainly focus on, as well as early Christian history of Islam, as well as heresy and Gnosticism and how this relates to the early formative roots of Islam. So you can see here, I discuss the Muslim Talmud, which is the Sharia. I also discuss a lot of early biblical history, the laws of Noah, and so on. And yeah, so please have a look at my channel. And also the links that I gave you guys. I have a list of currently, I think, 1,217 books in this collection. All of these do relate to Islam. You can see I have a folder on Christianity, my dictionaries and references folder. Most of the data that I'm using is in this folder here. The link is in the chat. I will keep dropping it in the chat as we go. It'll be in the description. Then Gnosticism. Gnosticism is heavily linked to Islam. It does claim within Islamic law, the Sharia, to be explicitly a Gnostic religion. Then, of course, Islam folder, my Judaism folder, and my Nazism folder. Nazism is also influenced by Islam. There's a direct link between Nazism and Islam. It's not the only influence on Nazism, of course, but there is a link directly to. If you go to this folder, you'll see here I have numerous books. So most of the work that I will be presenting today comes from this list here. And this is made freely available for you guys to download. An example of one of these books, I was talking about Abraham, and we've got here Abraham, Hagar, and Ishmael at Mecca, a contribution to the problem of dating Muslim traditions. The reason I bring this up is because we've had Alfonso Harris, also known as John Week, Jason Boring, and other names. He's been using Motsky as a source of proof of a point he's been making, because he says we have to believe Motsky that the Hadith go back very, very early. Well, Motsky is telling us there's a problem with the dates of all of the traditions. So if he believes Motsky, then he's got to believe Motsky that these traditions in Islam are wrongly dated. There's a serious problem with them. Okay, and I will leave it at that, and we'll jump back to where we left off last week. Any comments before I go, Adam?
No, you already said it. Everything perfectly on spot. So God bless you for doing these kind of extensive studies and research, man. You dig in
Thank you.
history and you dig in all of these scenarios where Muslims are not digging in, basically. So
Well, they're not
absolutely.
allowed to dig. Sharia law does not allow them to investigate and to engage with anything that would cause doubt. Doubt is haram, it is illegal, and therefore they must reject, according to Islamic law, they must reject anything that would cause doubt, and they must vilify the person who is creating the doubt. So it is incumbent upon them to attack the person causing the doubt and to never engage with the source of doubt.
Wow, well said, brother. Well said. Absolutely on spot. I had a guy who last time wanted to proclaimed a wajibul qatl on me just because I was showing hadith. He said, "Why do you have to show this hadith?" That's his.
Mhm.
That's his. Why do you have to like let the mullahs and the scholars do that? Why do you have to show this hadith? Show only the goody goodies ones. Otherwise, you are
Because
wajibul
it is
qatl.
illegal. No, you're right. It is illegal for Muslims to bring shame upon Islam and upon Muhammad. It is illegal for Muslims to describe and believe that Muhammad is anything less than perfect. So it is against the law for a Muslim to believe that Muhammad is less than perfect and to bring shame upon Islam. And in fact, the penalty for this is death. We've covered it before in Islamic law, but I won't do so now. But this is unfortunate. They have to, therefore, they must even deny their own sources if their own sources cause embarrassment to Muhammad.
Absolutely, brother. Right on spot. Yes, we have shared that in Sharia when we did, I think, 2 sessions on Sharia. So yeah, you
Yes,
absolutely
we
shared.
have. We can cover different things in the future if you like, but yeah, let's. So, guys, let's continue with this. So, right, we spoke previously about this 1200, this 1,200 kilometer walk. So, if we assume she walked from roughly Hebron, Jerusalem, somewhere in that in Beersheba, she walked approximately in a straight line 1,200 kilometers with a young boy and one bottle of water to all the way to Mecca, right? Unfortunately, this would not be possible. Now, this narrative of Hagar and Ishmael is dated to 827 AD. Now, if Muhammad died 632, this story comes 200 years later. So clearly, it's a very, very late addition to Islam. So we cannot believe the story about Hagar within Islam. It's a much, much later addition. As I said, dated to 827 AD. Okay. So yeah. So now then briefly. So right. So we've covered that. Also, I mentioned last that in this Wikipedia article, it's very interesting. They do not have Mecca, they don't have Jeddah, and they don't have Medina on this map of ancient cities. What they do have, though, what is very, very interesting, they have Qaryat al-Fao, which is the capital of a very ancient pagan civilization which invaded from Yemen and controlled all of Arabia. And they introduced the worship of the moon god Al-Makkah, right, which we know is the Babylonian moon god Sin, right, or Shin. And this was their capital. right here. So this is an ancient city. This is legitimately an ancient city where the capital of pagan worship of a pagan group that settled Arabia. And yeah, Tamar we have as well, because Nabonidus came from Babylon. He was the last king of the Babylonian kingdom before they were invaded. And he settled in Tamar. He lived here for 10 years, then moved back. And he also brought the worship of sin. So now you had two groups. So sin moved, groups that worshipped sin moved up north and also down south. So very interesting. These two places exist, but apparently these do not. Very unusual. So the mother of all cities is not on this list because they are not attested well historically. Any comment, Adam, before I go on?
Uh, I don't think that they can actually say that as well, because of the historical maps that has been shown by J. Smith as well, and Dan Bluebaker. But now that you're showing what Makkah is, it's amazing how these things are actually connected.
Yeah,
So
we'll be talking about maps shortly. Yeah,
exactly, and in Quran chapter number 3 verse number 96, it talks about Bakka, and they proclaim it as Makkah, even though that the Quran actually says Bakka, but they say in brackets, i.e. Makkah,
mm,
and and then you will see a whole narrative around it. But we'll show the narrative some other day. Right now, let's look at
yeah.
Makkah.
Now we've also spoken about the Baqqa symbol, which is the symbol of Al Makkah, the moon god, also known as Shin or
Hmm.
Sin, the moon god Sin from Babylon. The same moon god in Canaan, the same moon god in Assyria, the same moon god all over Arabia. So let's continue. Remember, so this was the 1,200 kilometer walk, and Abraham would do day trips from Israel all the way down to Mecca and back in one day because he would ride the Buraq. The Buraq, as you know, is a part mule, part elephant, part angel, part camel, part woman, part peacock, part horse that Gabriel gave to Muhammad. And of course, the horse would not let Muhammad on, so Gabriel punched it in the face, right? Because that's what you do when your horse misbehaves, you punch it in the face, and then of course, and so on. We discussed this. Burak means lightning, and the original resources all discuss Burak in connection with Abraham. The first Islamic connection to Burak is actually a very late, also another very late historical piece, which is part of a poem by a judge. We'll get into that in a moment. However, but prior to that, it is all part of Hebrew myths, which all are in relation to Abraham. And even in the Islamic narratives, Burak is associated first with Abraham, right? So it's part of Gnostic stories. It is part, and also they speak here of Sirius. Now, this is very, very interesting because in the Quran, in 53:49, they speak of Allah as the Lord of Sirius, and we'll talk about that in the future. But understand Barak, one of many colors, and of course, they speak of this horse, woman, peacock, elephant, mule creature has all the best colors. Okay, Burak is lightning. Burak, as we mentioned, is related to the book of Enoch, which is not considered canon. It is apocryphal. Then you've got the Qumran book of giants, which is a Gnostic book by the Manichaeans. So you've got all of these, and you've got Barak, you've got all of these Enochic Gnostic traditions, and it's from the Hebrew al Bakai, the light has risen, Barak, Barakai. You will see spellings Bur, Bar, Bor, AK, AQ, UQ, whatever. You'll find many variations, but it's all about Abraham. And as I mentioned, the very first mention of Burak is by in a poem by a man called Al Hajjaj, about 200 years after Muhammad again. So you've got very, very late references. Then we mentioned, of course, Muhammad says that the mosque in the Kaaba in Mecca was created 40 years before the temple in Jerusalem. Okay, that's in Da'if Bukhari, as we can see here. And of course, this is, if you look at a timeline, King Solomon built the Temple of Jerusalem, as we all know historically, at roughly 1000 BC, which means that, according to this guy who comes 600 years later after Jesus, the Kaaba was built at roughly 1040 BC, right? Which means that, and Abraham apparently built it, and Abraham died 625 years or so, 600 years before the Kaaba was built. So Muhammad is obviously doing taqiyya mathematics.
No, he's not doing taqiyya, brother. Come on. Who told you he's doing taqiyya? For taqiyya, you have to know something and then you have to lie about it. Muhammad did not know about anything. So he had no idea what was happening.
Well, yeah, I said, well, Takia mathematics. So, guys, so that's a brief overview of where we were before. Oh, reason not is if only Jabril had punched Muhammad in the face instead. Yeah. Um, yeah. So there you go. So right. So guys, we're going to talk a little bit about old maps, and we're going to talk about the origin of Macoraba. So that's going to come up as well. So on the old maps, this is an old map of Arabia. As you can see, this is a very, very inaccurate map. Okay, if we compare this with a modern day map, if I go to a modern day map of Arabia, if I bring up this region that we associate with Islam here, if you look, this is Arabia here, and you compare that, right? You compare this with what we've just seen here. This is a totally different picture, highly inaccurate. But of course, Muslims want to claim that Makoraba is the original Mecca. We're going to show, using far more evidence than has been presented previously, that Makoraba is in Yemen. So this Mecca that they speak of in Makoraba is based in Yemen. So old maps were not so good, right? They used different coordinate systems, and the coordinate systems must be altered. I must state that Alfonso Harris, known as John Week, known as Jason Boring, The World, and a bunch of other names, possibly even Mince Windu, who came on last week, he will claim that there's a map designed by based on an algorithm by a bunch of Russian researchers who prove that Mecca is in the right place and all the other towns are in the right place, and therefore these maps by Ptolemy prove that Mecca is Makaraba, is in the correct place. This is entirely false because that map assumes, it starts with the assumption that Mecca is in the right place. It does not prove that Mecca is in the right place. It sets out with the assumption that Mecca is in the correct place, and then it says, based on us assuming that Mecca is in the correct spot, we can then show that this coordinate system places all of these other cities in the correct place. So no, it does not prove anything. So notice we have Ethiopia here, known as Ethiopia sub-Egypto. Okay, so Ethiopia, given one context, was just anything below Egypt, right? Then notice you have Sabai. So next to Makkah, you've got on the map here. Let me double check where I was. Notice you've got Sabai here. Okay, Sabaeans. Now this is roughly where Mecca would be, and it says here that the Sabaeans were here. The Sabaeans were the worshippers of the moon god Al-Makka in Yemen, and they are in this region. It says that, so it says you've got moon god worship here, Al-Makka from the Sabaeans going on here. And then you've got Saraceni up north, the Saracens. These are from Sarah, okay, the destitute of Sarah, right? So the Hagarenes, the Saracens, you might know them. So it says the Saracens are up here north, and you've got the Sabaeans here in the center, and also all the way down to the south, because we know this was Sabaean territory down here. So bear that in mind, and we'll continue. So Makaraba, Muslims want to argue that Mecca does appear very early on in the historical record. We know from, if you read Patricia Crone's book, she says that Mecca doesn't appear on any maps before roughly the year 900. So Mecca is a very late addition to history. If it existed, it was trivial, insignificant, not important enough to merit any mention. Mecca does not appear before the very late 9th century in any historical record, right? But they want to prove that this place called Macoraba, so there's two portions, the where and there's the what. So they want to say that Macoraba appears on maps made by the supposed map maker Ptolemy. Ptolemy didn't make maps. Ptolemy wrote books on how to make maps, right? So Muslims like to use this idea of Macoraba to say, no, but Ptolemy showed that in the 2nd century, Mecca existed, and it's marked on Ptolemy's map. We will show that this is entirely false. So Ptolemy wrote a book which is typically called the Geography, right? And so Ptolemy, 2nd century, and he gave these coordinates for this place called Macoraba. Now there's some concern. So Macoraba, in the Greek, Macoraba, according to Ptolemy, it is a city in northwestern Arabia Felix, happy Arabia. Arabia Deserta is southern Syria to the northern Hijaz. So the northern section is Arabia Deserta, okay? Desert Arabia. Arabia Felix is the southern part of the Arabian Peninsula, including Yemen, right? Oman, southern Saudi Arabia, which includes Najran, which was a Christian pilgrimage site. So Claudius Ptolemy's 2nd century geography supposedly places the name Macoraba in the west of the Arabian Peninsula. Now, with the lack of historical evidence for Makkah, Islamic apologists claim that this place is Mecca, and Mecca goes back to old ancient maps. Now, Ptolemaeus Claudius, known as Ptolemy, who lived from the year 90 to the year 168 AD, so he was quite old, was a Greek writer who wrote the Guide to Drawing the Earth. It is translated in slightly different ways, giving different books, but this is close enough. It listed latitude and longitude according to a system he devised for cities, mountains, and other geographical features known in his day. Now, we're going to be using works from Daniel Gibson, who has recalculated using modern systems the location of Mecca in Ptolemy's geography, and we'll also use Ian D. Morris, Mecca, and Macoraba. That's his document. So Ian D. Morris, Mecca, and Macoraba. These are the two documents where you will find this information. Right. Now, many sources included, of course, Ptolemy. Okay, so it says here he correctly identified the location of the Hijaz. Now they speak of a man called Bochart. Okay, in a chapter arguing that Kush. Now Kush happens to be north of Ethiopia, which is in Africa. Right, that's also important later. But Kush was the ancestor of the Saracens. So in other words, the Saracens supposedly came from Kush, which is in Africa between Egypt and Ethiopia. So this guy called Bochart gave an account of Arabian geography. Bochart correctly identified the location of the Hejaz, and he named some of the towns in the Hejaz, including Mecca, which in Ptolemy is Macoraba. Now we must understand that many dictionaries, many encyclopedias say that Mecca is Macoraba. And they just this is a piece of information that they take for granted that Mecca is Macoraba. Many dictionaries, many encyclopedias, many references are guilty of this. Okay, and they state here that so that basically Mecca in Ptolemy, and this is a quote by Bochart. Bochart says that in Ptolemy's map, Mecca is Macoraba, and he thinks that it means Mekaraba or Great Mecca. There is very little to no evidence of this. This is just an assumption based on Mekaraba, assuming that Macoraba is Mekaraba. Now, this is the first recorded instance where Macoraba was identified with Mecca. So now he's claiming that this is somewhere in the 1st century, right? Somewhere in the 2nd century, Mecca was associated with Macoraba. So when did Bochart live? Because this is the very first time we have someone stating that, hey, Mecca is Macoraba. Well, this guy, Bochart, he wrote this in 1646. So his idea comes from 1646. It does not come from the 2nd century. It is an assumption he made, and we know it's a false assumption that he made. So the first identification of Macoraba as Mecca is traced to Samuel Bochart in Sacred Geography in 1646. And also, no satisfactory derivation has been proposed to explain the difference between the names Mecca and Macoraba. The word is based, interestingly enough, on the southern Semitic root Mukarrib, meaning temple or sanctuary. It also means altar. Mukarrib happens, well, we'll get into all of that. So notice Mukarrib, the word Macoraba comes from temple, sanctuary, and also altar. Bochart used the term MKT RBH, these triliteral roots, for Great Mecca. However, this is an incorrect usage for the Arabic language. So the term Macoraba, so the terms Mekaraba, if we go back a little bit, this idea of Mekaraba as the Great Mecca would not be accurate for the Arabic language. It has been rejected on that basis alone. Your comments, Adam, before I go on?
Man, none whatsoever, because it's all history and I'm learning.
Okay, cool. I'll continue. So now let's go from Makaraba. Okay, so now we know that the root here is Karib. Okay, Karib, right, to Al Mahabisha in Yemen. So if we adjust Ptolemy's coordinates, we will correctly place all the towns and all the rivers in southern Arabia on a modern map. However, we have to align his particular coordinate system to a modern coordinate system. However, all the towns previously cited as locations of Mecca are all discovered to be located in the wrong places. So, for instance, here are Ptolemy's locations overlaid on a modern map. Mecca and Macoraba are overlaid in red. This is the modern location of Mecca. This is Macoraba on Ptolemy's map. So, this was too far north and too far east. However, notice all of these towns are all in the ocean. So clearly we have a problem. All of these towns are all shifted into the ocean and into all of the wrong places. So now notice there are no Meccan archaeological artifacts until the 8th century. The first mention of Mecca is in the Byzantine Arab Chronicle in 741 AD, which places Mecca in Mesopotamia. This would happen to be Babylon, right? Iraq. The first time Mecca is listed on a map of the Middle East is 900 AD. Mecca, being the mother of cities according to Quran 692 and 42:7, did not exist in the early 7th century. There's absolutely no archaeological evidence for this. What we do know is that once you properly work out the map, Macoraba is located 720 kilometers south of Mecca. Okay, if I go here, this is Al Mahabisha here. This is Mecca up here. So if you go 720 kilometers south, Macoraba turns out to be right here in Yemen, in western.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Go on.
Oh no, I'm just amazed. Like wow. So you Makkah in Yemen.
Yes,
Crazy.
and we. Yeah, go on.
No, no, there's nothing to go on right now because that's where the earliest manuscript of Islam was Quran was found as well. Remember? Um,
Correct. And the
so
earliest writing of the Quran was also in Yemeni Arabic.
oh yes, wow. So that's crazy. You know that's how crazy it is. Like it just all of these dots are now connected. Especially like even the Sana manuscript. Where is Sana? Can you show us over here, right on the map?
Sanaa is going to be. Hold on, I need to enable
Like
all of the.
I think it should be within 100 kilometers of the radius of this place because it's
Let
right
me just
there.
add Sanaa.
Yeah. So yeah, so even Sana
It's Sanaa.
manuscript, which
Here we
is
go.
one of the exactly, so which is one of the largest collection of the Quranic manuscript, even though they are not the same that we
100
have,
kilometers.
right? 100 kilometers. So imagine that. So so what is the probability of all of this to be right here? Like,
I'd say there's a story here. There's something to be said about that. And also, it's very. Remember, I mentioned those Al Makkah temples, those temples to Makkah.
yeah, yeah.
Those temples are all here in this region.
And okay, now let me give you another thing. Let me give you another thing. Very
Yep.
interesting. When I was making a video on the Surah Feel, Surah of the Elephant, and I was showing people that how can the elephants come all the way from Yemen to the Makkah, Saudi Arabia, while crossing 700, 800 kilometers of desert. It's not possible because those were Yemeni elephants. So now if you put Makkah right inside Yemen, yes, the elephants can travel to Makkah now. So even
Of
the
course they care.
Surah Makkah, Surah Fil, where Allah says that the elephant, and by the way, Muhammad was born in the year of the elephant as well. So imagine, brother, this is not a coincidence. Even when we ask Muslimin, are you guys idiots? How can elephants travel in desert? How can elephants come almost 800 kilometers walking in a desert when the capacity of a well to take the water out per day is limited, because these are limited wells, they can only give you limited amount of water. It's not like a stream of water that is coming out. You can only
Right.
take very limited water. And I've done that whole video. It's like an hour long video in my channel as well, and I showed and proved that this is a stupidity in Quran, otherwise it's not possible. But like it's not a stupidity if you move Makkah to Yemen.
Yes, that makes perfect sense then. Yes. And also notice it was possible. Remember, don't forget the kingdom of Aksum, I mentioned them, the Ethiopian kingdom of Aksum. They controlled not only this region, but they controlled all of this. Sorry, they controlled all of this as well. They controlled all of all of Western Arabia. All right, Western and Southern Arabia was under their control all the way up to Mecca, right? Or almost into Mecca, they controlled all of this area, right? So they had their capital also. I mean, Abraha was here, based supposedly, right? And of course, they could easily have transported those elephants across here.
Yeah, they could, but like
Besides,
those were called Yemeni elephant anyways. So
yeah, but
if
they
you
could have
read
taken
the
them across when they were small, and then just they grew up there. But this whole area is very green and very lush.
exactly, and
There's
I
parts
showed
of that
that
area
on
that's
Google
very
Maps
green.
as well. I showed that on Google Maps as well. It's brother Lloyd, like seriously, this small part of your video is insane.
No, thanks. Excellent. Yeah, so there's every reason to start thinking that the Mecca originally is in Yemen because of also remember the moon god Makkah, right? Makkah in the Yemeni Arabic becomes Makkah in Arabian Arabic, right? So yeah, let's continue. This happens to be what Al Mahabisha looks like. You have mountains, you have all of the things that would fit Petra. Okay, everything that would fit Petra would also fit this region, as far as I know, right? Everything that would fit Petra fits here as well.
Wow, absolutely.
Right.
Wow.
So this
So
is what.
all the rocks, all the mountains, all the valley, and the Makkah and everything.
Yeah,
Absolutely great.
it could also fit here. It could also work here. So this could well be part of that story. So there's no reason to think it's not part of that story. Because here you've got Marib, the old capital, right? Here's Al Mahabisha, here's Najran. And so, yeah, you've got, and Sana'a is right here. So notice the old capital here, Marib, Sana'a, Al Mahabisha, and Mecca up top here. So this is all in one area. And here's Aksum right here. And the ports were down here and up here. There was a port here and a port here. So yeah,
So
so there's no
travel,
reason
so
that yeah,
so travel, which Muhammad supposedly doing, and the trading and all that is possible because all of these things were already present.
yeah. You had a port here at Asab, right? And you had another port. There was more elsewhere, but you had a major port right here. There was a second one. I don't have it on here, but I know there was a second one not far away.
Crazy. Great. Thank you, brother.
All right. So anyway, moving on. So now let's look at the accuracy of Ptolemy's map. Let's look at the accuracy of the second century maps. Now, notice we don't have Ptolemy's second century map. As I said, he wasn't really a map maker. He told people how to make maps. He wrote instructions for that. This is actually not a second century map. This is a 15th century reconstruction of the first of the first map, okay, of the second century map. So this is a mid 15th century Florentine, that's from Italy, world map based on the first modified conic projection in Jacobus and Gellus's 1406 Latin translation of Maximus Planudes' late 13th century rediscovered Greek manuscripts of Ptolemy's second century geography. So it's a copy of a copy of a copy. Okay. So now other places that are actually very important to us, like Serica up here, this place here, Serica, you can't see the name, but this Serica is shown up here. This actually is also very important. This would be very important later when looking at the Gnostic, heretical slash Christian influences that entered Islam and the battle between the Orthodox Christians and the Gnostics, right? For the battle of the interpretation of the Gospels and the correct view of what the Gospels said, right? So Serica actually does feature in that battle later, and that's marked up here. But notice this guy obviously was Greek, right? So he knew this region reasonably well. But look how bad Italy looks. Look how terrible Italy looks. Italy looks nothing like that. Europe looks very little like this. Arabia does not look like this. The Horn of Africa absolutely does not look like this, right? Let me go back here to this picture of the map. This is the world. Okay, I'm going to remove the borders and labels. This is what this should look like, and you can see that this is very little. And notice he's got almost no information further south. So his information is in a very narrow band from Europe up to a little bit into Eastern Europe, and then a little bit over here in Egypt and so on, and Israel area. After that, the detail gets completely lost, and it just says here Ethiopia interior. Ethiopia interior, and then that's it. Oops, sorry, Ethiopia interior, and that's it. So there's very little to go on. And after here, he says terra incognita. Basically, here be dragons. So this map is very, very unuseful. And in modern terms, it's completely primitive. So there's no way we can say, well, this map accurately showed us where Mecca was, right? So this is again Arabia as he showed it, right? As you can see, this is Italy up here. I mean, this is a complete joke, right? And you can see here, this is what Italy actually looks like with Sicily. So you can see that the dimensions, the angles, everything is completely wrong. It's off by hundreds of kilometers, right? And here is what Arabia looks like with the Horn of Africa. And here you can see an actual image of Arabia with the Horn of Africa. So we can see how deeply inaccurate these old maps were, that people say, no, but that's Mecca. It's on the map, on the second century map. This second century map is completely inaccurate.
And it is basically derived in the 15th century. Can you
It's a
find
copy of a
anything?
copy of a copy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, exactly. It's 15th century. So no, it's not a reliable map. This is another map. Look how bad this one is by
At,
comparison as well. Yeah.
at the same time, when Ptolemy talks about Makkah, does he talks about the Makkah in the Saudi Arabia in the middle, or does he talks about the
He spoke
Makkah
of
at
Western
somewhere?
Arabia. So,
Exactly.
but yeah, he doesn't talk of it. Yeah, so we'll get into that. We'll talk more about that. So this is another map, 1482, printed map from the 15th century. Ptolemy's description of the known inhabited world by Johannes Schnitzer. Right, so you can see this map here again, completely wrong. The dimensions, the angles, everything is completely wrong. Right, Italy is a little bit better, oddly enough. The shape is slightly better, but still, everything's just completely wrong. Right, you can see here from a closer view. I mean, that's Italy. That's also totally wrong. This is wrong. You know, Sicily's on the left and all that. So this is partly fantasy. So this is not reliable by any means. It's a wonderful art, but it's not reliable. Let me take this away because, yeah, let me just move this away. This should not. Uh, sin, God, sin. Actually, you know what? Let me just add this as a animation for later. Okay. So let us talk about something which will be related to this, and we will talk more about this. Okay, so let's talk about the Sabaoi, or the Sabai, okay, and the Bible. So the Sabai, now remember we spoke of the Sabaeans, they're in the south. These guys are Yemenis, they are moon god worshippers, and we said very clearly that one of the earlier 10th century Islamic historians, a very well known historian and historian of Islam, stated that the Sabaeans were Muslims because the Islamic practices derived from the Sabaeans, these pagan moon god worshippers who worshipped Al Makkah or Sin, and they had identical practices to the Muslims. Right? We discussed that in the first episode. The Sabai are a people in the ancient kingdom known from local inscriptions as Saba, also known as Sheba. We know that the Queen of Sheba, the story of the Queen of Sheba, derives from this people, and they were in southwestern Yemen. Saba is attested in Assyrian sources. It's a well known historical kingdom, it's a very famous kingdom. In the annals of Tiglath-Pileser III, to whom the Saba Adja paid homage with gifts in 730 BC. So they go back to BC. They took gifts to the Assyrian king. In the annals of Sargon II in 715, the Sabaean Tamra is mentioned as bringing tribute. So, but now in the inscription of Sennacherib, okay, Sennacherib is mentioned in the Bible. That means Sin has replaced the brothers. So it would seem that his brothers died, and the god Sin had his mother have him as a child to replace the dead siblings, right? According to which in 685, Karabili sent gifts. Karab. Now we're back to this Karab, okay, KRB. We mentioned that earlier. So if you go to Bruhl's New Pauly, it says here, Assyrian, Sennacherib, okay, the moon god, Sin, has replaced the brothers. Now, there's a certain very annoying troll called, we've mentioned him before, and he wants to insist that Sin is a, that Almaka is a sun god, but anyway, Sin is a moon god, very specifically a moon god, okay? So understand, so we've now got Sin, the moon god, has replaced the brothers. And of course, there's references to Babylon, but let's continue. The kingdom fell after civil war. So the kingdom in Yemen fell after civil war between several Yemenite dynasties, all claiming kingship, and they split into separate territories. The Himmerite kingdom arose as victors, but there was this whole tumult going on at the time. Now, this group were traitors. They're mentioned in Jeremiah and in Ezekiel, and in Job 1:15, they're described as a rival nation of Israel. These Yemenis are described as a rival nation of Israel, enemies of Israel, in fact, due to their religious differences. So they wanted to wipe out the Israelis. In Isaiah 45:14, they are described as a people of great physique. In Job 1:12 to 15, we see that the Sabaeans are used by Satan to attack and enslave Job's family after killing their servants. And the Lord said unto Satan, Behold, all that he hath is in thy power. Only upon him, only upon himself, put not forth thine hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord. And there came a messenger unto Job and said, The oxen were plying, and the asses feeding beside them. And the Sabaeans fell upon them and took them away. They have slain the servants with the edge of the sword, and only I am escaped to tell thee. So these people, biblically, were servants of Satan. And they served Satan to be part of the affliction upon Job in the Bible. So these people are clearly anti-biblical, anti-Jewish, anti-Israeli, anti-God, basically the God of the Bible. Your thoughts, Adam?
No, brother, you already connected it with the Bible. So, quite frankly, I have very little to say today.
Okay, right. So the Sabaeans are believed to be Muslims. We spoke about that earlier in episode 1. This, according to Muhammad Shukri al-Alusi. We mentioned his and we read through the very detailed rulings, laws, and practices. They had the same number of prayers. They had the same laws. They had the same rulings. All the beliefs, everything. So, who compares the Islamic religion to that of the Sabaeans? In his writings, Muhammad compares the two beliefs, and they are similar in most practices. Right? The Sabaeans were practitioners of many elements of the religion of Abraham. So now we know that these Sabaeans were practitioners of the religion of Abraham, the original religion of Abraham. We know from Jewish texts that the religion of Abraham was Sabaeanism, the worship of moon god. The Sabaeans worshipped the moon god Al-Makkah, and according to Maimonides, Abraham, before he worshipped the one true God, he was a worshipper of the moon god. His father was a worshipper of the moon god. His father was named after one of the moon gods. Terah was one of the names, of course, of the moon god. So now his entire family were involved with moon god worship. Abraham broke away from that. So, and then he worshipped the one true God. And he's sort of the founder in that sense of Judaism. But before Judaism, remember, we also saw that Muhammad and his followers rejected Christianity, rejected Judaism. They wanted to know the original religion of Abraham, which we know was Sabaean moon god worship, which was based on, derived from Babylonian paganism, worship of the moon god Sin. Your thoughts, Adam?
No,
Yeah, checkmate, right? Checkmate.
yeah, that's the end of it. I have done like 3 videos already on Islam is not an Abrahamic religion. I was
Yep.
stupid. I was stupid to make that video. I should have said Islam is an Abrahamic religion, but not the one that you believe to be the Christians and the Jews.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I just want to mention there's a comment here from Reason Dawn says, thanks for that. Bochart stupidly thought Mecca was a Phoenician colony. Okay, so there's more to the story. The Phoenicians occasionally named a city the Great Something. Somehow his name derivation was retained, even though the theory was rejected as dumb. Yeah, I mean, no one accepts his theory. Um, so yeah, so that Muslim historian was not too bright. Let me claim these pagans were basically Muslims. I don't see any problem here. Yeah, these moon god worshippers who worship the Babylonian moon god. So yeah, interesting stuff. So let's continue, right? Let me just, by the way, let me just do something here, just so you know. I have all of these references in my notes. I typically have all of these references, right? I will drop this one right in the chat just so you guys can go and find it for yourselves. Okay, there we go. Done
And
that.
we did that in part 1 as well. That Abraham's religion was Hanif, and Hanif is Alamia is also saying he's Hanif, and that's all in part 1.
Yes, correct. So you see, all of this is connected. It's not like it's one small fact. It's all of these things are related. They're all connected. They're all part of the same story, and they tie together. So let's continue. Okay, so now we know the moon god Sin. We are familiar with that. Now notice the deity Sin is also known as Nana in Sumerian, and is the Mesopotamian god of the moon, and also the god of wisdom, the Hikmah. Okay, is also the god of the Hikmah. And the Hanif were pagans. Don't forget, the word Hanif means pagan. They insisted. The Christians called them Hanif. The Jews called them Hanif, saying, You are pagans. You are heathens. The Muslims insist that they are Hanif. In fact, Allah says He is Hanifan, right? So Allah is a
Yes.
Hanif. The Muslims are Hanif. And the Muslims will insist, but we're Hanif. We're the original religion, but they were calling all of the pagans Hanif. The Muslims would insist that the pagans are Hanif, meaning pagans, but they would use the very same name for themselves, which makes absolutely no sense. So, Sabaeans, okay? Sabaeans carried out trade by land and by sea, leading to massive growth from the 18th century BC onwards, so nearly 2,000 years before the birth of Christ. They established colonies along the Red Sea and in Ethiopia. They had extremely lucrative spice trade, especially frankincense and myrrh, and they lived in the land of Sheba as regional monarchies. The first king was the Karab. Again, we get to the Karab, KRB, Al-Bayin. Okay, El again is one of the names for God. This was the early name of sin until God came along, Yahweh came and said, "That is my name." Right? Pardon me. He instructed Abraham that this name belongs to me. I am El, not these false gods. Right? Karab al-Bayin, ruling during 700 to 800 BC. Now notice we've got Karab el, Karibal, Karab al, Baal. See, here we have Baal, Karab Baal. Right?
Hmm.
We'll continue. You'll see this come up in our. So, Karibi Ilu, okay? Karibi Ilu. Earlier we had Karibilu, now it's Karibi Ilu, was a Mukarrib of the Saba, okay? Was a Mukarrib of Sheba who reigned in 700 to 680 BC. The name in Akkadian matches Karab al Bayin in Sabaean, which is combined of Karib and El, which means one who carries out the instructions of El, and Bin, one who removes punishment. Now notice Karib, one who carries out the instructions. Okay. Later on, this word becomes mukarrib, mukarrib, makarrib. Okay. Mu is very, very similar to this term here. One who carries out the instructions of El. Mu is one who is a servant of, one who does. Mu is the Islamic prefix that says Muhammadan is one who follows Hamad, right? It's a prefix that says, I do what comes in the next word, right? So that's all related. So Karabal, one who carries out the instructions of El, the god El. So he's the Karab. He is, in other words, he's a priest king. But these priest kings are not just priest kings, they're also warrior priest kings. They are people who must go to war because these moon gods are war gods, right? These moon gods are war gods. They have to carry out jihad. Okay, I'll continue. Now, the best known in context, now, Queen of Sheba and the Caribs are best known in context of the story of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. We're not going to get into that at all. That's a whole story as well. Various writers have also cited this narrative. The Assyrians speak of it, the Greeks and the Romans in the 8th century speak of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Saba is mentioned twice in Quran, chapter 27 and 34, and as the people of Tubba, Qawm Tubba, in Quran 44 and Quran 50. Right? So they are well known. So they're in the Bible. They're also in the Quran.
Okay, okay.
So, yeah, for
Go
sure,
back, go back, go back, go back, go
for sure.
back. You actually said that they are the ones who do war battles.
They are warrior priests. They are priest kings. They are the Karibs, the Mukarribs. You see eventually the word becomes Mukarrib. They are priest kings, but they are technically warrior priest kings,
Okay,
which
okay.
should remind you of someone.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So let's look at 98.5. It just reminded me of that because you were talking
Sure.
about Hanif. So the plural of Hanif is Hunafa.
حنفاء.
Hunafa is the plural of Hanif. In the English translations, they always say upright or true or inclining towards truth and etc. etc. But the Hanif is singular and Hunafa is plural. Look what the translation is saying. Look what the Arabic Quran 98.5 is saying. And they were not commanded except to worship Allah, mukhlisin, sincerely to Him, Hanifan or Hunafa, and to establish prayer and to give zakah and that is the correct religion. And that is the correct religion. You see what's happening over here.
The Hanifs
And
are the pagans. Yeah.
Hanifs are pagans, and they are the ones who are called to be to do this, right? So when we look at this, we can actually go to 2231 as well. And you know where what happens 20 2231? It goes into a great issue. So let me go 22:31 now. Look what
Sure.
happens. 22:31. Check this out. I have shown you Hanif, Hunafa. Hunafa is what?
حنفاء.
Is the plural, right? And there they say inclining to Allah, but it is actually Hunafallah. Allah is Hanif. Allah is one of the Hunafa. Allah by himself
One
becomes
of the
Hanif.
Hunafa.
Yeah,
One of
it's
the.
Hanif because Hunafa is plural. It's not singular.
Hmm.
If it would say Hanif, then it's singular. Inclining to Allah. What do you mean by inclining to Allah? Hunafa, we already saw it means uprighteous. So you can actually translate it in a different way, maybe. But it says Hunafallah, right? Let me go and do tooltip. Here it says being upright. So why do you translate it as being upright now? Just say uprights. Uprights Allah to Allah, right? So man, not associating with him, and he who associates with Allah, it is as though he had fallen from the sky and was scratched and the birds, etc., etc., etc. But like, you see how crazy it is?
Well, so those who incline to Allah. Now notice El was the. Remember, El even goes back. El was the original name for the main god, El, right?
Hmm.
So they were inclining to Allah. These people were inclining to El. This is the ones who carries out the instructions of El. In other words, they submit to El. You see, they submit to El, the one who carries out the instructions, and you make sure that everyone else does it as well,
Man, wow. Oh,
right? Reasoned Answers says something very interesting. Notice how many historical sources speak of Sheba and the contrast of the fact that none talk about Mecca.
yeah.
So, yeah, Sheba is well known. Mecca is not known. Mecca is mentioned what once in the Quran, once. So now let's go. So we're going to tie. Look, we're going to be going a few places and tying a few things together. Now let's look at. So going back to some things we mentioned in previous shows, right? You have to watch all the shows to put all the pieces together. It's so much data. But the word mikrab, the word mihrab, makoraba. Now let's have a look. So now we figured out where makoraba is, right? We figured out where it is. Now let's start talking about the what it is. Okay, what is it? Okay, so
Hmm.
mihrab. Okay, this is from the Encyclopedia of Islam. Okay, plural maharib, maharib, makarab. Okay, now you could, if depending on how you pronounce this H, that could also be makarib, mikrab, mahrib, right? Understand? The words are very similar. The sounds are very similar. This is the prayer niche in the mosque, the mihrab, indicating the direction of prayer. It is made up of an arch and the supporting columns, the pillars. Remember, we spoke of the Yemenis? They worshipped the moon god and they had pillars. And Abraham was told to stop worshipping pillars and to destroy the pillars. Remember that?
Yes,
Well,
yes, brother.
and
Can I go back?
yeah,
Can I go back?
sure.
I'm so sorry. I'm
Please
still
do.
stuck at Hanif, and I'm still
Please go
stuck
on.
there
It's
because,
all
like,
related.
yeah, yeah.
Hanif, Makara, they're all the same. It's all the same things. Okay, go on.
This is 679. Chapter number 6, verse number
Mhm.
79. It says, Indeed, I have turned my face. Inni, somebody else is speaking. Allah is not speaking. Somebody else is speaking over here. I have turned my face, myself, towards He who created Fatar Samawati wal Arz, who created the heavens and the earth. Now, here there is no comma, but they have to add comma over here because here Hanifan, again, Hanifan.
حنيفا.
How do they translate Hanif now over here, brother? A
As a
true,
true monotheist, that's yeah, that's getting interesting.
right? Why do they have to do that? Because now they have to say that the person is actually a true monotheist or he is converted. But here it is Allah. Here it is Allah, the one who created the skies and the earth. Hanifan. He is Hanifan. And then it says and Wama is and I am not a mushrik. So I have turned my face towards he who created heavens and the earth, Hanifan, who is Hanif, and I am not one of the ones who associate towards who associate others with. I'm not a mushrik. So, brother, this Hanif, this concept of Hanif is deep. There are I think 10 or 12 verses in Quran which talks about Hanif
It
or
should mean the
Hanifan.
religion of Abraham. It should say the religion of
Yeah,
Abraham.
three times. It says three times it's religion of Abraham because this is in Quran chapter number 2, verse number 105. We showed that. Um, Quran chapter number 3, verse number 95 as well, as we've seen, 4, 125, and then so on and so forth. So, but like Allah Himself could be Hanif. Like 6, 161 is also Abraham, who is towards the Hanif. But Hanif is basically Allah. By the way, it's one of the names of Allah as well, as you know already. Um, man, that is crazy.
So
That is
Allah
crazy.
follows the religion of Abraham? That's interesting because if it's not Christianity, not Judaism, then it's the moon worship of Abraham.
Yeah, let's look 16, 120. It says um, that indeed Abraham was a leader, okay, devoutly obedient to Allah, Hanifan, and then again, now Hanifan is again upright. Now again, Hanifan is upright, but
Why
let's
do
go
they
back.
change it? Yeah.
Because they want to deceive all of you guys. Now it's true monotheist. Here it is, true monotheist.
Upright.
Upright, true monotheist, and then upright. It's crazy. They don't even know what they are doing.
Interesting. No, it's a propaganda. It's just propaganda. We discussed Hanif in the last show quite in depth. And again, in the first show, we discussed one of the very earliest things I spoke of was the pillars. Now you've got the makraba, okay? Mik, the mikraba, right? Think about it.
Hmm.
So, okay. So you've got the supporting columns. Now notice all of these mikrabs, many mikrabs, you can find plenty of photographs of the mikrabs with supporting columns, columns, and columns, right? And column worship was something that Abraham was guilty of when he was a pagan moon worshiper. And columns was one of the ways. And the Yemenis had columns. They would have multiple columns at their temples. They worshipped columns. That was the symbol for their god, was the columns, right? Amongst others. And it gives the impression of a door or a doorway. Okay, so now you've got these supporting columns. So this again is a very pagan symbol that's held over from that kind of worship. I'll continue. Now let's have a look. Okay, the Kaaba. So outside of the standard narrative, the Islamic narrative, nothing is known of the Kaaba's history. But we do touch on that. We have spoken about it, and I will be talking about it in the next show in much more depth. The only reason for presuming the Kaaba was in existence in the 2nd century is the mention of Makkah as Macoraba by Ptolemy. Now, this is in the Encyclopedia of Islam, Volume 4. Now, this flaw, based on this 1646 error by Bochart, right, has become common knowledge, but common false knowledge. It's a mistake. So even these really good encyclopedias commonly state this as fact when it's not true. Ptolemy never said it was Mecca. Bochart in 1600s, in the middle of the 1600s, identified it as Mecca, and he's known to be wrong. His fact is known to be false. Okay, so understand. So we need to be aware of errors like that. If you look at the Concise Encyclopedia of Islam by Parinder, little is known of the history of the Kaaba outside of Islamic tradition. But there is reason to believe that the shrine was an active pilgrimage site as early as the 2nd century. The geographer Ptolemy calls the city Macoraba, with the significance of mikrab or temple. Now notice the mikrab, right, with the columns happen to be in Yemen because this is where the major temples, the major Makkahs of the moon god al Makkah, right? Everyone would go to worship the moon god al Makkah at his temple, which were known as obviously shrines, known as temples, known as mikrabs, right? So this is, and they would go there to worship the columns, right? So he's wrong about Ptolemy calling it Macoraba in the 2nd century, but interesting where he says here, because Ptolemy said that Macoraba had the significance of mikrab. So the word Macoraba could be a westernized Arabic, could be a westernized, a Latinization of the Arabic word mikrab, which actually comes from Ethiopian. The term mikrab comes from Ethiopia again, right? So you've got mikrab, which could be just have been transformed into makrab, makoraba, makrab. Right, so there's a slight relationship between the words. Now, Mecca is known to the ancient geographies as Macoraba and to the Arabs as Makkah. Now, Makkah is also the moon god, Makkah. right? We know this is an error. The ancient
Yep.
geographers did not identify Macoraba with Mecca. We know that's false. The name Macoraba means temple in various Semitic languages, and this probably referred to the Kaaba, not definite in any way. But the question is, we know there were Kaabas in Yemen. We know there were Kaabas in the north. There were Kaabas in the south. There was more than one Kaaba. There were multiple Kaabas in Yemen. And Glazer believes that this name may have signified the same as the South Arabian or Ethiopian mikrab, or temple. So now we've got one of the famous authors, famous researchers stating that Macoraba actually comes from mikrab, which comes from temple. And once we start looking at the origin of the term Macoraba, it's associated with Yemen. Your thoughts, Adam?
Uh, there is no thought now. It's all clear.
Okay. So in Arabic, mihrab means praynish, but originally it meant temple because it comes from the Ethiopian, which means temple or sanctuary, right? So now notice you've got the propylon. I mentioned the propylon earlier, which are the entrance into a pagan temple. You have these propylon, these columns. I showed in Jerusalem as well. You've got these columns, this fake set of columns that you enter into the temple. Why are they there? There's no reason for them to be there except that this is a pagan practice to have fake columns in front of the entrance, fake columns in front of the door. This is a common pagan practice. I discussed that in the first, so guys, go back for that. So this is a common feature of mikrabs, the fake columns, the fake propylon. I discussed that at length. So now we're gonna discuss a few different pieces of evidence and then start tying this together, right? Aside from Muslim traditions, practically nothing is known of the history of the Kaaba. The sole reason for presuming the Kaaba was already in existence is the mention of Makkah under the name of Macoraba. We know this is a mistake, right? So, this guy, Glazer in Berlin, believes that his name may have signified the same as the South Arabian and Ethiopian mikrab, or temple. The accounts of the campaign of Abraha, which may have been elaborated. So Abraha, this is the elephant guy, right?
Hmm.
He was a Christian. He traveled from Ethiopia to defend Christians in Yemen who were being persecuted. The accounts of the campaign of Abraha, which have been elaborated with legendary features, also suggest the existence and worship of the Kaaba in the 6th century, but tell us nothing of its appearance or equipment. So there's the story of the Kaaba, but where was Abraha? Well, Abraha happened to be happily in Yemen.
Yemen. Yep. Even Ibn Kathir says that. Like, it's not us who's saying that, or it's not the non-Muslims saying that. It's Ibn Kathir.
Yeah, and
He
guess
talks
where he
about it.
was? Abraha was in Marib. Marib was the capital, was the pagan capital that they conquered, they took over, and there were three major temples to the moon god Al-Makka in this region. One here at Sirwa and one at Marib, and a third one in this general area. So understand his capital was here. This was the Mecca.
Wow. So that's why he doesn't have to travel like 1,000 miles. It's just
Yes.
there.
Yeah, he's right there. He's literally in Mecca. Or he's at the Makkah, right? If you want to look at it that way. If you're looking at the moon god Makkah, he's right at Makkah. So understand. So we know that Abraha, right? And he happened to be right there. He spent most of his time in Yemen, right? Or all his time. So Abraha is also spelled Abreha. He flourished in the 6th century, right? So that's in the 500s. Now, isn't that odd? Hold on, the 6th century. I thought we're dealing with this 570. So okay, no, that would be correct. So that's correct. But he was the Ethiopian Christian viceroy of Saba, Yemen in southern Arabia. Okay, fine and well. He was a zealous Christian. He is said to have built a great church at Sanna called Al Kulais or Ecclesia to compete with the Kaaba at Mecca. So he built a great church to compete with the Kaaba at Mecca. Now, I will discuss in the future that the Kaaba, the Kaaba in Mecca, the one we have today, was originally built as a church in the Ethiopian style. The Ethiopians would have churches that were built wood, stone, wood, stone, wood, stone, layers of wood and stone. And originally, the Kaaba was built of layers of wood and stone. So it was originally, it seems, an Ethiopian church, right?
Oh my goodness. And secondly, you need to realize one thing. The church in Sana, why would he build it 1,000 miles away? He has to build it somewhere close proximity. Otherwise, there is no purpose. So that
That
also tells us.
Fair point. Fair point. He's competing with it. Now, notice the main temple was here at Marib. Where was his capital? Marib. Where would he build his church to compete? In Marib.
Exactly. So that's and so all of these things combinedly states and tells us that Makkah was not in Saudi Arabia. It was right here. Otherwise, like
Yeah,
imagine, brother, back in those days, we never had aeroplanes, we never had cars, we didn't had trains, we did not had anything like that. So that 1,000 kilometers could be traveled in a day. Like it's
yeah,
not possible. So even if you have a car, 1,000 kilometers is still pretty far away. You know, you still need a day to drive 1,000 kilometers.
yeah. Now, if
So
he built a church to compete, he supposedly never got into Mecca.
mhm.
So how did he
Supposedly,
build a church there?
interesting.
So
Yeah,
yeah, you're right. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go on, please. You were saying about cause not having. Yeah,
yeah, because like there's no purpose of building something as a competition if nobody can actually come there from that place. You see what I'm saying? You have to build it in such a way it is far enough yet not too far enough. So people could come and visit, yet they do not have to travel maybe a 30 days um, and up to their death kind of a travel if they are traveling through the desert. You see?
right. And the distance to Mecca is 896 kilometers. So
You
900 kilometers difference
you are taking a straight
between.
line. Nobody can travel in a straight line, even back in
That's
those
also
days.
true.
Yeah, so yeah, 1,000 to 1,200 kilometers if they are traveling through well to well, and they have to travel from well to well, and hence they cannot simply travel in a straight line.
That is also very true. Yeah, that would take 20 something days to make that trip. So, uh, right. So, Abraha, he repaired the principal irrigation dam at the Sabaean capital of Marib. The Sabaeans were very good at making dams, and in fact, this dam breaks, and it's basically it's mentioned in the Quran that this dam breaks and it destroys the city there, it destroys the area because the dam is broken. They have no water. It destroys so much of the land, and they leave, and this is attributed to Allah punishing them in the Quran. Abraha is chiefly famous for the supposed military expedition that he led north against the city of Mecca in the same year as Muhammad's birth. But notice, he did conquer Yemen. He was sent from Ethiopia. He did go to the temples of Al Makkah and he did conquer the city, right?
Hmm.
So, in the same year as Muhammad's birth, about 570. Now, if you speak with Mal, if you watch one of his shows on Abraha, Abraha apparently died in 550. So, if he died in 550, how did he go and conquer Mecca in 570? Though it was supported by elephants, the expedition failed, and Muslims believe that Mecca escaped capture only through a miracle. Abraha's rule apparently ended in 575 when the Persian Sassanians invaded the region and brought the Sabaean kingdom to an end. Now, outside of later Islamic tradition, there is no mention, none, of Abraha's expedition, including from Abraha's own writings. There is
Okay, that's like that's just funny, man. I'm so sorry. I should have muted before laughing.
Yeah, so understand, there's no record of it, nothing outside of the standard Islamic narrative, which is clearly false on this issue. It's myth. Clearly, it's myth, right? I'll continue. So, African war elephants had not been used. This is proper historical research, right? African war elephants had not been used in the region for over 600 years. It is also difficult to explain how Abraha would have gotten hold of African war elephants in Arabia. Furthermore, Quran 105 appears to be appealing to traditions from the book of Maccabees and not referencing any expedition on Abraha's part. This is a discussion from another scholar who says, look, I'm sorry, but there were no elephants in that region for 600 years. Where the heck do these elephants come from? Right? And this seems to be taken from a story in the apocryphal Maccabees, right? This is deuterocanon, okay? This is secondary canon. This is not canonical gospels or books of the Bible, and it's not referencing any expedition on Abraha's part. And Abraham writes nothing about any such expedition, right? And then the story gets more interesting. Let's talk about the white elephant. So the lead elephant was a white elephant. So of the elephants, and apparently he had 6 elephants. Okay, he had 6 elephants, and this white elephant was known as Mahmud, which you'll see here. Mahmud is simply a contraction, it's a nickname for Muhammad. So Abraha owned a Muslim elephant called Muhammad. And this elephant is said to have stopped at the boundary around Mecca, and this elephant refused to enter. So the elephant, the white elephant called Muhammad, stopped at the boundary of the city and refused to enter the city where Muhammad was born. Isn't that just a crazy coincidence, Adam?
I have never heard about Muhammad to be the name of the white elephant, but I know about the story of the white elephant. Where did you get this word Muhammad as the name of that white elephant?
Mahmud. His name is Mahmud, but you can see here the in
Mahmoud.
the
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Muhammad. You see MHMWD. This is like the without the consonant, the consonantal root here.
Yeah. The elephants did not want it to go in because the elephants knew that this is bad. We cannot go and attack Makkah. Yeah. All that yada 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 story.
It's insanity. I mean, just like so, he just happened to be named after a certain prophet. So now, archaeological discoveries in South Arabia suggest that the year of the elephant may have been 569 or 568, as the Sassanian Empire overthrew the Aksumite rulers in Yemen around the year 570. But according to Muhammad Assad, this surah. So now let's talk about what happened. Remember that the birds are supposed to have dropped stones on these elephants, right? And dropped stones and killed the soldiers, right?
Yeah.
So
Mashallah.
stones killed the soldiers. Let's have a look. So, according to Muhammad Assad, this surah does not describe birds literally carrying small rocks. Referencing al Zamakhshari and Fakhr al Din al Razi, he states the words used, namely the stones of Sijil,
Hmm.
denote a writing, something that has been decreed by Allah. So, in other words, the birds didn't drop stones, something happened that was decreed by Allah. He explains that this decree by Allah was a very sudden epidemic outbreak. So, what stopped Abraha's army was not stones dropped by birds, but apparently an epidemic disease, which, according to Ibn Ishaq, caused fever called haspa and smallpox, judari. Assad concludes, points to the fact that the stone hard blows of chastisement preordained were a sudden, virulent epidemic due to the fact that the word for fever, haspa, primarily means pelting or smiting with stones. Apparently, the same is common in Urdu. Apparently, within the Hindus' discussions, there's also that same. So, in the famous Arabic dictionary Al Qamus by Al Faruzbadi, the word ta'ir can denote any flying creature with a bird or insect. And so, okay, so never mind that too much.
Okay. Okay.
But
Okay.
so
Okay.
now, according to different sources, they got sick. They weren't pelted by birds literally with stones.
Okay. So who is writing this information?
Let me see. I don't have the blah blah blah. I need to double check that, but let me see
Okay.
if I can find that for you.
So while you can find that, let me show what it says in Quran for this. This is Quran, not even Hadith or anything. This is what Quran is saying. Alam tara kayfa fala rabbuka bi ashabil fil. Have you not considered how your Lord dealt with the companions of the elephant? Alam yaj'al kaidahum fi tazlil. Did he not make their plans into misguidance? وَأَرْسَلَ عَلَيْهِمْ طَيْرًا أَبَابِيلَ. So now this is absolutely clear. He sent against them flocks of birds. طَيْرًا أَبَابِيل. It is absolutely 120,
so
150,
flying
160,
bird.
5,000% clear. Tayr means birds. Ababil, flocks. Okay. Tayran ababil. Tarmihim bihijaratim min sijil. Striking them. Tarmim, they're like throwing at them, right? Bihijaratim, stones after stones, which are made of baked clay. Okay. So
Yeah, it says
these are
here
the,
in the encyclopedia of the Quran. It says here baked clay or earthenware. Yeah.
yeah, because this is the same word Allah used when Allah destroyed the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, and Allah sent the baked clay from the sky as well upon them. But like this is like when Muslim scholars do not understand how to interpret this. That's why I asked you who said that, and if it is a
So I'm
Muslim
just finding
scholar,
the
then
reference. But other scholars, for instance, interpreted sigil as hardened lava.
once
Okay,
again
some as
baked clay. So
petrified
hardened lava is
hardened
also,
lava.
once
Yep.
again, brother, baked clay, something which is baked, so it has to be warm at some time. And yes, certain scholars say sigil is hardened lava because when the word baked clay, how can you bake a clay, right? So it might be a molten lava pieces that the bird picked up and threw. But once again, it it cannot be a disease, brother. I don't know who
I
wrote
know,
that,
no.
but
Agreed, but no, notice it says then ingeniously. It says here, okay, the expeditions.
Let me
It
show your
says here.
screen. Hold on.
Ah,
There's
okay.
your screen.
So this is in the Encyclopedia of the Quran. He says, then ingeniously but most implausibly, he connects sigil with sigil, a word which means a scroll, see scrolls, a written decree, and renders the passage, thus he let loose upon them great swarms of flying creatures. But here you've got scroll. So now you've got like a third interpretation where sigil becomes sigil, a word which means a scroll. So a writing by Allah. So they were killed by a writing from Allah, by a disease, right? Now, why that's
No, no.
interesting. So the reason
Does he, brother? I cannot see that. Does he explicitly say a disease? Because the writing of Allah could be the decree of Allah, which is the
an
taqdeer of Allah.
insect-borne disease. So look, an insect-borne disease, right? Now,
Wow.
I want to bring this up because now this guy says ta'ir can denote any flying creature with a bird
Yeah.
or insect. So it
Any
doesn't state
flying.
apparently. Yep.
But like any flying does not means that they were coming like but like you see there's multiple problems over here. Tair in the Arabic is anything flying as a bird. If an insect can flying as a bird, can it be called tair? Difficult, but can be, right? Depending
Right.
on you're going into classical Arabic. But
Yeah.
once again,
Now the reason I
why
bring this up. So here's the reason I bring this up. I'm going to
Mhm.
skip ahead to something that I
Okay,
was going to do much later, but this is the
sorry.
reason I bring this up. Okay. So Abraha or alias Gallus. Okay.
Hmm.
So short version. In 24 BC, the Roman governor of Egypt decides to invade Yemen. Okay. So he takes like 11,000 soldiers and he decides to sail down there. And what happened is, unfortunately, there's some sort of accident and his ships go ship or get shipwrecked. Right. So
Okay.
they are forced to walk down the coast of Arabia all the way to Yemen. Right. They get towards the capital of Yemen, but what happens is they stop outside. They never quite get to the capital. They're forced to stop outside. And what stops them? Disease.
Oh.
You see?
Oh. So
Yeah,
somebody at a later time took some narratives like this and put it in the interpretation to make sense of the stupidity of Quran.
right.
That makes sense.
This is what I'm kind of leading towards. So the thing is, he had 11,000, 10,000, 11,000 men. They walked down the coast. Now he had a very, very famous historian, a very famous Roman historian with him, a man called Strabo. Okay, very famous historian called Strabo. Strabo wrote an account of what happened, and what is very, very interesting is that Strabo and all of these records of this event never once mentioned a place called Mecca. Never once. They only speak of Yemen. They marched all the way down the coast, and they only get to Yemen. They never speak of any place along the way.
Interesting. Interesting. Wow.
Okay, so anywho, now in a Shia hadith in Al Kafi, Imam Ali was born in the 30th year of the elephant and died in after Hijrah 40. Some scholars have placed the year of the elephant 1 or 2 decades earlier than 570, with the tradition attributed to Ibn Shahib al-Sukhri in the works Abdul Razak al-Sanani, placing it before the birth of Muhammad's father. So now we've got other problems because there are earlier works in Islamic literature which historians are now saying, hold on, this thing happened 10 or 20 years earlier, or even before the years of Muhammad's father. And the one event closest to that would be the story about Elias Gallus.
Man, how
So
much of these? That's why nobody is able to find the exact origin of Islam because they have stolen so many things from so many places and distorted so many things. And that is why, even if you look at any Islamic scholar for any history of Islam, they do not agree. They always disagree with almost everything because
correct. Does
they
you
don't know
understand the
Jack.
confusion? Even they don't know. Even they're confused.
Crazy.
Right. So I was just curious about like why did they bring up this epidemic outbreak illness, right? So when you start so anywho, let's move on. So I wanted to sort of pitch that and say, look, there's the story about Elias Gallus that comes later. Okay, so now let's look at Haram. Okay, let's look at Al Masjid Al Haram. Haram among the Bedouin, a sacred area around a shrine, a place where a holy power manifests itself. Encyclopedia of Islam, right? They've got multiple references here, volume 1, page 892b, volume 3, and so on. And they also mention the sacred territory of Mecca. Now, what's interesting is that so the Haram is Mecca, right? However, Al Haramain are the two holy places, usually Mecca and Medina, but occasionally Jerusalem and Hebron. So the holy places of Islam are not just Mecca and Medina, oddly enough, but they also, for some reason, include Jerusalem and Hebron. Hebron is where Abraham died. So Al Haramain, generally people would think of Jerusalem and Hebron. So,
I have
yeah.
another question. Hebron, that's not Islamic to be where Abraham died, right?
No, so he died in Hebron and he lived in Bethel, Beit El, which is exactly the same as in Islam, Beit El, the house of Allah, which is what they call the Kaaba, the house of Allah, Beit El. So
But
Hebron is just south here, where he, close to Bethlehem, if I recall. Let me just go to Hebron.
so
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 this is
so
where
so
he
so
died.
so what
Yeah,
you're saying is that in the Islamic scripture, because I have not studied Hebron in the Islamic narratives, at least in the earlier ones. So basically, if we believe that, then Abraham did travel 1200 kilometers to Makkah.
yeah. He supposedly traveled from Hebron all the way to Makkah, exactly
Oh
1,200
man.
kilometers, and back in the same day. Which is why they had to, which is why the scholars had to invent the story of the Buraq for Abraham to explain how he went 2,400 kilometers in one day. That's why the earlier
Wow.
stories of Buraq all are to do with Abraham, and only much later do they deal with Muhammad and the Buraq.
Okay, I have some people who are saying that
Sure.
there's a problem with the super chat and they are trying to send in super chat but they cannot. For example, Vivian just said that he sent a super chat but I can't see it, and the account was showing, his account was showing. So I'm sorry, Vivian, I have no idea what happened to YouTube. It's a YouTube problem. And if the account, your account has shown it, it's in processing and it might revert back. If it does not, you should call your bank or whatever credit card you use. So I'm sorry, it's more of a YouTube issue. Quite frankly, I'm so sorry. I can't do much about it, and I would recommend everyone for the rest of the video today not to send a super chat because seems like we have a problem. So, and by the way, everyone who would like to support me, my work or Lloyd's work, they can join us in Patreon. My Patreon link is in the descriptions, and obviously, Lloyd, your Patreon link should be in the description of your videos as well, correct?
If you go to my videos, I have a description. You can, yeah, if you'd like to, if you like what I'm
Yeah,
doing. Thank
please.
you.
Please
Yeah.
share that over here if you have it because people are trying to support, but apparently they cannot. So anybody who would like to support me, they can join my Patreon. This is my Patreon, and if you would like to support Lloyd, because in these sessions it's all Lloyd brothers. I'm just a supporter. You know, Batman has a Robin. I'm acting as a Robin. So yeah, so all of you who would like to support, they can use the Patreon. And apparently something is a problem at YouTube side. I hope they'll fix it within a couple of hours, but maybe not today. That maybe not they can do it right now. So I don't know what is going on.
Yeah. Yeah, recent answers just mentioned. It is interesting to note that the word haspa, which according to some authorities signifies typhus, the disease typhus, primarily means pelting or smiting with stones. But the idea of also when you have smallpox, you have little dots, little stones on your skin. So there's some confusion about whether they mean stones from smallpox or whether it's, and these Muslim authors literally said, hold on, but this is stones that were dropped on them. Understand? So was it disease? And then they embellished the story. They decided to just add all these details and make it into, well, Allah said, look, these birds are going to drop these stones. What birds? So understand, this is where this may have come from. Okay. So
Amazing,
now,
amazing.
okay, in Surah 4, verse 125, in which Abraham is described as Hanif, it is stated that God took him as a friend. Allah took him as a friend. Okay. And hence, there's the later designation of Hebron, the alleged burial place of Abraham, as Al Khalil. Okay. Now, that's
Al
within
Khalil
Islam.
simply means the friend, right?
Yeah. Now, but notice now. Here's the thing. So Muhammad is Hanif. Okay, okay. Allah is Hanif, right? Abraham is Hanif. But now let's have a look. A little problem with that. So when we go into the history, we find out it was not until after the Hijrah. Okay, so the Hijrah happened when 632 thereabouts, if I remember, 630. No, 622. 622. So it's
Yes,
not until
632 is
after.
when Muhammad died, FYI.
Right, yeah.
That's why
Because
you
yeah,
might remember this date. So
so it's
10
not
years
until
before. Yeah, sorry.
so it's not until after 622 that Muhammad, on the occasion of his argument with the Jews, when the Jew says, "You're talking nonsense, buddy, get lost." So it's only after the Jews reject Muhammad that he then says that the Old Testament patriarch Abraham is a Hanif. So the story of Abraham being Hanif doesn't come up until after the Jews reject him, and then he makes up the story. And only then does he say that Abraham is the first Muslim, and only then does he then make up the story that together with Ishmael, the ancestor of the Arabs, he built the Kaaba. So this again, this story only comes after 622. Why did Muhammad not make this tale before? Because he just decided to plagiarize Ishmael, plagiarize Abraham.
Wow. That is so basically for the first 30 years of Islam, he did not talk about Abraham to be Hanif or to be Muslim.
No, he did not.
He just said it in the last 10 years.
Yes. Yeah. And then this somehow made Abraham the most important person of Islam before Muhammad, right? So somehow now, this is how and when he connected himself to the Abrahamic religions. He made it up completely. It's completely made up. It's not an Abrahamic religion. He simply said, oh, by the way, Abraham is a Hanif. Abraham was a Muslim. Ishmael was a Muslim. So by making up this story, Islam was able to claim priority over both Judaism and Christianity by making up this entire story after the Jews reject him. Your
Just to
comment?
add, just to add and connect. In the Bible, you will not see God calling Abraham, come to my religion. In Islam, Allah says that I have chosen this religion for you. This is the best religion in the eyes of Allah. Multiple verses. But if you look at the
Mm.
Bible, God of the Bible do not say, I have chosen a religion for you, or I have chosen you for a religion which I love. The word religion in its core essence is paganism. Like, let me repeat, nobody needs to get go on a tangent for this particular statement that I'm saying. In the Bible, God never said Yehudism is a religion. In the Bible, God never said Christianity is a religion. No. God of the Bible is very clear. He chose particular Hebrew people, and he said, come to me, I have chosen you. Just like he said to Abraham, I've chosen you, and you will be, and your son I will establish my covenant with. And come to me, I am your father. So God wanted to have a relationship with his creation, and that's what God did. And he gave us covenant after covenants after covenants, and he established covenant slowly and gradually, the completion of which is in our Lord Jesus Christ. And then Muhammad came up and he ignored everything else, and he said, go to the religion of Abraham. But Abraham had a religion before God chose him. That religion was a Hanif, which is a pagan religion, and the word religion in its core is pagan. You see what I'm saying? I hope you understand what I'm saying.
No, that's. I think that's all. I think we've made it very clear that Abraham was originally a pagan, a Sabaean, a moon worshipping pagan, right? And this same moon worshipping paganism is what Islam adopted as its root, right? Where they get many of their practices from. And Muhammad, according to the researcher, according to the development of the Quran, only adopted Abraham after the Jews rejected him, so that he could then claim that Abraham was part of his lineage and that he was part of these growing religions. He made that up only very late. So yeah, so there we see that this is, he just made it up. He just asserted it. There is no evidence. There is no proof. Understand? They just asserted it, and any evidence that Abraham was a Muslim is manufactured after the fact.
Absolutely. By the way, we have a Muslim in the live chat who wants to debate, brother. I think we have done 90 minutes already on today's session. Would you like me to invite him up?
I mean, look, you know that Islamic debate is purely just rhetoric, false rhetoric designed to deceive. I mean, if he's got questions, we can have a discussion. I always like to. Joe Rogan has discussions. It's extremely popular. I wonder why these Muslims never want to have discussions and take questions.
Yeah, let's see. Let's see if he can prove us wrong because
I mean,
this
if
is
he's going to
part
go off
three.
topic, I wouldn't be very charmed with him.
If he goes off topic, we will remove him. That's how easy it is. The topic is the religion
I
of
was going to finish
Abraham.
the slide, so let me just
Please.
finish the slide. So Haramain, okay, is a dual form of haram, meaning the two sanctuaries. It is the traditional Islamic name of the two holiest cities, but it also refers to Jerusalem and Hebron. So Islam has no connection to Jerusalem and Hebron, but haram also means pyramid, which is preeminently the pyramid of Cheops and Khephren. Now, we've mentioned before these connections to Egypt. So haram also originally refers to pyramids. And we'll learn later on how some of the groups that they are related to used to make regular pilgrimages to Egypt. So now you've got this again, this connection to the original gods that came from Egypt. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to finish the story of Mukarrib, which is very interesting to explain the whole what is Mukarrib, but fine, bring him on now. I guess at this point we can
Oh,
stop there.
Mukarrib is very good. I will next time if it is Mukarrib, I will gather all the uh, Quranic verses
Yeah,
on Mukarrib and Mukarribun.
because we need to start talking about Mukarrib exactly when you start talking about, because Macoraba comes from Karib.
Okay, now check this out. He has been given a link and he is still babbling in chat. I don't know why. Because he has the link, he should just click the link and come up. Now I am irrelevant. Should I debate you? Though I should come and record your lies about irrelevant people like you. So why did you even say
Debates
earlier?
take time to set up. You're supposed to have rules and a premise and a topic and you know. I mean, if he
So
has questions, he's welcome to come up. If we, he has to
check
take
this
our
out.
questions as well.
He first said I want debate, right? And he first said
On
debate
what?
me.
So
Debate
specify your
me.
topic.
Forget
Specify your topic.
brother, forget that part. Forget that part. He wants debate, he wants to debate me, and then suddenly I'm irrelevant. Imagine how stupid, idiotic, and ignorant these people are. They demolish their own statement just like Muhammad in one single conversation. Like I did not have to do anything. He just demolished himself. Like he just simply demolished himself once and for all by stating three contradictory statements in one single live chat within less than 5 minutes. When the link is already there, it's clear. Come up. He's back. I want debate. I want
Well,
to
look, I
debate.
mean, while he makes up his mind, let's just go on then. If
Yeah,
he's
let's
just
go on.
okay, so mu. So now we're gonna have to look at this prefix mu. Okay, so thank you, Jackie, very much. Yeah, he's such a distraction. Don't let it happen. So the word mu. Okay, so here I thought this would be very useful for determining mu.
Moo. That's
Okay,
like Surah Bakara, the cow.
so, so now we've got to discuss. Well, yeah, we this is very Quranic. Okay, at-tawbah, the mu. Okay, so the word mu. Now we got to start looking at some a little bit of language. Okay, a little bit of Arabic language. So the Sharia enables Muslims to bring their lives in line with the will of Allah. A Muslim is Sharia compliant, and the word Muslim contains in the Arabic definition all of its meanings. Right, it contains what it means in its definition. Okay, so the word Muslim in Arabic has two parts, which is a mu, the prefix, and the triliteral root of the word Islam. Now, remember, I have mentioned to you that I have mentioned in the past, and we will come to this in the future. Muslims will tell you that the triliteral root SLM, okay, if I go here,
So
so if you look at the triliteral root SLM, right, they will say that this means that means salam, okay? It also means Islam. You see the letters SLM. What they don't tell you is that the very earliest use of the term SLM is to the god Shalim, right? The Canaanite god Shalim, right? So that is the very earliest use of SLM. It actually means the worship of the pagan god Shalim. So yeah, so before Islam, before that, this is what Salim really means, really meant. Okay, so now the word, so you have two parts, the mu prefix and the triliteral root of the word Islam. That root word Islam is a verbal noun that means submission, right? So when mu is prefixed to such a root in Arabic, the resulting noun means a person who does the thing that the root word denotes. So salim, if it means submission, then a muslim is a person who does submission. However, if we look at the original SLM, meaning the god Shalim, we'll get into detail in this in the future, then this a muslim is someone who follows the god Shalim, the star god Shalim. Okay, so now you're talking about again a Babylonian pantheon, the Babylonian pantheon of gods. Now, a Muslim is one who submits, but to what? So they say Abraham was a Muslim, he submitted, but to what? The answer is vague, there's no clarity there. One who submits, but to what? Now, in theory, a Muslim, though, is implied he submits to Allah's will, which is the Sharia, the Islamic law. So, Muslim is by definition Sharia adherent, because that's what the word actually means. So, if someone claims to be a Muslim or converts to Islam or was born into Islam and he does not apostatize, then that it is reasonable to conclude that that person is Sharia compliant. He follows the Islamic law. And it is implied, okay? It is explicit or it is implied until that person tells you he does not follow Islam, until he apostatizes. So we have to assume that Muslims follow the Sharia law. Okay. The converse is also true. One who does not submit to Sharia or does not adhere to the Sharia does not meet the linguistic definition of a Muslim. All these Quran only Muslims, they are apostates, they are not Muslims. Right? So now Sharia is defined and understood by the Islamic scholars to be an all encompassing legal and military doctrinal system. Now, what is interesting is that the Mukarribs also pushed a legal, doctrinal, military system. It was a legal, religious, military system of government that features some religious beliefs. Interesting. So, Sharia is a legal military system of government that features some religious beliefs. It is binding for Muslims. Sharia includes a multitude of very innocent obligations, like to believe in the oneness of Allah, to pray 5 times a day, to avoid eating pork. However, jihad, as various forms of warfare to spread Islam, is a core obligation. All who are Muslim by birth or by conversion are obligated to actively support the establishment of a universal governance system called the caliphate or the imamate. Prior to the caliphate, there was a different term, which we'll get into, and based on the Sharia and the replacement by means of jihad of any political system not governed by the Sharia. So this commandment to Islamic supremacism is problematic for non-Muslims because it's difficult for us to understand a political, legal, religious system, right? So, but we need to understand that Muslim, right, is one who submits to these laws. Okay, so I'm going to skip that. That's fine. So now let's get to Macoraba.
Brother, hold on a bit. Let me just
Yep,
show some people something right
sure.
now. It's very important that sometimes we gotta do that.
Mm,
So this Ahmil guy, which is right now in the backstage, look what he is and who he is. So everyone be aware of these Muslimin. This is what they are in true sense. I'm not going to give him any stage, as you can see why. This is his name, brother. This is the nickname that he has. You don't have to proclaim and read it out, but this is his nickname. I tried to edit it myself because you can't see the full one. Adam, I would rather, and then dot 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 because it was a big name. This is what he uh, F a kid, then debate a Jew. This is the kind of people that these Muslims are and we are dealing with. This is what his nickname is. Now, let me just show you what his real name is so that people will know in essence who these people are in reality. So I looked at his real name. This is his real name, guys. Danish Nasser. This is his real name. which I can see obviously, and I have to expose this guy who wants to F a kid, F a kid. Obviously, I have to do that now because if anybody knows this guy, then it is his duty. It is his duty to go and expose him. He is a filth for the humanity. He is a filth in humanity. And he is, and look, he's showing a finger, and then his name is F a kid, then debate a Jew. So, guys, remember, when you find these, if you know this guy, Danish Nasser, report him. Report him.
Wow.
This is what his name is, and this is what he does. This is who he is in reality. And my moderators, please block this guy from my channel once and for all. Thank you so very much, brother. I'm sorry to change the
Wow.
topic a little, but we gotta
Shocking.
show this. You can see what he wrote. Imagine that.
That is shocking. Shocking. Yeah. He blew his opportunity to come up and show how smart he was, I guess.
Like he is not smart, as you can see from his name, the edited name that he did, and he's not smart that he thinks that I will not know who he is really if he comes up and do these kind of things. When you were speaking, he showed me a knife, a can opener, a bottle, and he showed me his fingers and all that, and he was doing that in the back end. And I was like, let me just read what his true name is, but like because his name was very vague and it was like dot dot dots, and I was like, okay, let me just see. So I clicked on edit, and that's where I see his full name. Imagine how dirty, filthy minded these son of mutas are. That's the reality of these people, man.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
brother. Sorry about this distraction. Please carry on.
Now, look, I mean, this is Islam. Unfortunately, they're required to do this by the doctrine of commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. It requires them to do that.
Apparently, yeah. It has been proven many times in our videos.
Mm. No, there's the fundamental doctrine in Islam, for those who don't know, is called commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. What's the name in Arabic, Adam?
Uh, Nahi ani munkar. Um,
Yeah. Um, so that is the fundamental doctrine within Islam. It's called commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. Actually, let me just go over here. I want to show you guys something since we are here now. So so this is the fundamental book Q, commanding the right, forbidding the wrong, page 713. So I'm just going to go there for a minute because I want to show you. This page 713. Here we go.
okay,
This is
okay,
the
go up.
fundamental
Yeah.
doctrine.
Kitab bil ma'ruf wa nahi anil munkar. Yeah. Al amr bil
Okay,
ma'ruf wa
that's it.
nahi
Yeah.
anil munkar.
Right. So this is the fundamental doctrine. This is the most basic fundamental doctrine of Islam. Everything else within Islam hangs under this. Muslims have an obligation to command the right. It is a communal obligation, and there are levels. Okay, and I will do this very quickly. But within Islam, this doctrine, jihad, is part and parcel. It falls under this obligation of commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. Don't forget that commanding the right does not just mean it's an obligation upon Muslims. It is also an obligation for Muslims to make non-Muslims, that means you who are not or a non-Muslim, to follow the Sharia, to do what they say. Non-Muslims are also required under this law, this Islamic law, to follow Islam, to follow the Sharia. So notice here, this is the set of levels. Now, these are a suggested, recommended list of levels. However, they can jump straight to the end without going through the levels. Okay, and that is interesting. You might have found him. Excellent one, Thaddeus. Excellent one. So yeah.
Very possible.
Okay. Yeah. So, guys, understand that they are supposed to explain that something is wrong. They're supposed to they explain. Then they're supposed to forbid the act verbally. They're supposed to tell you to stop. Okay. Then, now look, we can go into each level here and discuss it in depth. I'm not going to do that. But there's to censure with harsh words. In other words, the instructions are they have to abuse you verbally, right? They have to use verbal abuse. right? So they can swear at you, which is what Muslims will do because it is part of the Islamic law. They're required to use harsh language. Then they can right the wrong by hand. In other words, they can kick, break, or hit. They can hit you, slap you, punch you, kick you, or break things. Then notice it's odd. Intimidation only comes after because this is where you are going to threaten them with far more severe punishment. Then Muslims are required to assault that individual. And if that doesn't work, they must get weapons. They must use force of arms. This is part of the Sharia law. This is why Sharia is something that they hide because it teaches them to use violence. And don't forget, they don't have to go step one, step two, step three. They can start here and finish here. They don't have to go in this particular order. These are just suggestions. Okay,
Yeah,
I'll
and
leave that at that.
no, no, you don't have to leave it at that. Let me fix that 110% that whatever you are saying is 110% correct because this is everywhere in Islam. I'm going to show you
Mhm.
one of the hadiths and then I'm going to show you something else as well. There you go, brother. Share my screen. And as you said, this is something that they cannot follow in sequence. You're absolutely right. Why? Because check this out. I heard the Messenger of Allah say, whoever of you sees an evil. Now here evil is not an evil. It says man ra'yal munkaran munkar. And as you can see as well, go to your slide, the first page, the kitab,
Let me just bring it back
the
up.
same
Uh,
one, the title of the kitab,
here.
title of yeah, zoom in. Amar bil maruf wa nahi anil munkar munkaran, right? Munkiran. Okay, the same. So let him change it with his hand. So the first thing is hand, brother. And if he is not able to do it, then with his tongue. And if he is not able to do so, then with his heart. So, brother, actually, in reality, hand comes first.
Yes.
So, so words comes later because you are not able to do it with your hand. That's where the words come in. And then the weakest of the faith is that you cannot do it with your hand, neither you can do it with your tongue. So you think of it as a bad, that he is bad with your heart. By the way, just to let you know how these people deceive, the Islamic people deceive, that they can deceive your president as well. I'm going to show you a
Yeah.
clip of Joe Biden who actually used this hadith, which is the hadith of the jihad. This is not in one location, it is in many locations. As you can see, this is in many locations. This is in Riyadus Salihin, this is in Sahih Muslim, this is
Yeah.
in Ibn Majah. It is everywhere because this is the hadith of jihad.
Yeah.
Jihad
No,
that
no,
you have
that
to.
hadith is actually referenced when you go into the text of the Sharia. It's actually referenced and then it's expanded over like 20 or 30 pages to explain exactly what it means. So you don't just have the hadith, they go into a lot of detail to explain exactly how to abuse, how to beat, how to attack, how to hurt, when, what, how, who.
And let me show you now Joe Biden and what he
Mm.
proclaimed, that he got deceived by these Muslims as well. Just watch him.
Hadith from the Prophet Muhammad instructs, whomever among you sees a wrong, let him change it with his hand. If he is not able, then with his tongue. If he is not able, then with his heart.
So he just proclaimed this hadith, which is the hadith of jihad, a fight, right? So basically, according to Joe Biden, our president, your president of the United States, he just proclaimed what? That if somebody goes to a restaurant where alcoholic beverages are being sold and he orders an alcoholic beverage, a Muslim should go and punch him and break his glass and say, hey, you are doing something which is a munkar, a wrong thing. If he cannot do it with his hand, then he should say it from his mouth, saying, oh, stupid, idiot, demonic being, why are you drinking? And if he can't even do that, then he has to think in his heart that this guy is doing wrong. Let's take another example. A guy goes and he buys a car in interest. Everything is sold as in interest over here. So according to the president and this hadith, which he was so ignorant about before he quoted this, all the Muslims should actually go and destroy each and every person who is selling cars on interest, houses on interest, all the credit cards on interest, alcoholic beverages on interest, or alcoholic beverages, or pork. Everything. You have no idea what you. And what about the LGBT guys? Kick them. Kick them hard. Let them not be LGBT.
You know,
And each and everything. Destroy the churches. Everything. Because according to Islam, Christians worship Jesus, who is just a human,
yeah.
a prophet. So
Well, it
all
says
the
in the
Christians are mushrik.
Sharia that if a Muslim sees something wrong and does nothing, then that Muslim has sinned,
There you
and
go. There you
therefore
go.
they
I'm
must.
showing your screen. I'm
And
showing
and
your
also
screen.
it states that, you see, the Quranic verses and the hadiths all indicate that whoever sees something wrong and does nothing has sinned. And also, remember, some scholars have said you must have permission to do so, that is, to attack you, to assault you, to kill you, or hurt you from the caliph. And the Sharia states no, stipulating that there must be permission from the caliph is mere arbitrary opinion. This is not true. This is not the case. So they are happy and they're able to just carry out violence upon you. So that hadith is actually referenced right here, and then they go through a few dozen pages to explain exactly what they need to do. All the laws are explained here, what they need to do. So you see, you have to bear down on him with sharp, harsh words. You have to insult him, right? You can break things and so on, and there is no punishment upon you for doing so. But so maybe let's take the last few minutes and finish up with this, and I can try and finish at least one more slide.
Yeah, yes, but before you start, I have the same
Sure.
guy again. He's not really very sharp. You know why? He just created another account. He came in with another account, and this time around, his name was, "Hey, that was not my real name. This is my real name." Man, this guy is absolutely dumb, rather dumber than a dumber dumb. He thinks if he comes back again with a new name, with with the edited name saying, "Hey, my real name is this, not that," we will believe it because
Sure.
oh man, that is just crazy. These guys are idiots, man. These guys are really idiots. Oh, like what did he say? He said that is clear admission that previous one was his real name.
Yeah, Danish Nasir. Now we know who you are, man. Too late, buddy. Too late.
Please, brother, carry on. Sorry for the distraction.
Yeah, crazy stuff. Okay, guys, so hopefully that was at least entertaining and also educational, learning about the Sharia. So, Macoraba is easily derived from Mukarriba. Macoraba, Mukarriba. This would just be a Latinization of this old Arabic, Yemeni Arabic name, right? The Mukarriba, okay, the Macoraba, the Mukarriba, the Macoraba, think, Macoraba is a priest king, and they served the will of the Allah, Al-Makka. We know that the moon god Al-Makka was also known as Allah. So the name Allah goes back to 700 years, right, BC, right? So we know that from the coins that Al-Makka also happened to be Sin. So Al-Makka was the name of the moon god, the Babylonian moon god, Shin, right, was Sin. And he was also known as Allah, right? So the Mukarrib was a priest king who served Shin, or Sin, right? He served Al-Makka. So we're talking a priest king. Muhammad was effectively a priest king, and he's also a warrior priest king. So these Mukarribas were warrior priest king. So under Islam, what happened was they took the term caliphate and the khalifa. So Mukarriba became in Islam the khalifa, right? And the leader who became the Amir al-Mu'minin. Now, what is interesting, we discussed this term last week. Before there were Muslims, before there was Islam, those people who became eventually a century or so later, 1 to 200 years later, who became Muslims, who worshipped Islam, they were the Muhajirun, right? And before that, they were also the al-muqbinin, right? They were just the believers. They were just the believers. And the term Amir goes well before Islam. It comes from Yemen as well. So what you've got is the al-muqminin, the believers. Okay, and min in the Hebrew and in the Arabic means a heretic. Okay, the mu'minin, the min would be a heretic. I discussed that. I will get into that in the future, but mu'minin, mu'min, right? One who does what is followed in the next word. The next word is min, M-I-N, which happens to be a heretic, a pagan. Mu'min, okay? One who does this thing here in the next word. So, yeah, so that would be your mu'minin. The Amir al Mu'minin was literally the commander of the believers. In other words, a military commander. This is not a peaceful commander, this is a military commander. Okay, it's adopted by Umar ibn al-Khattab on his election as caliph, and the title was employed exclusively as the title of the caliph until the end of blah blah. Now let's look at the Amir al-Muslimin. This was the commander of the Muslims, which was first assumed by the Almoravids. They were a minor sect, they were a minor group under, I believe, the Abbasids. I'll get into that later. So they adopted this name because they wanted a name that was different to the major. So the major grouping was the Al-Mu'minin, just the believers. Believing what? Who knows? But the believers did seem to be ecumenical. In other words, they were made up of Jews, Christians, and these unknown believers, this group of people. Okay, so there's a connection there. I will get into that again sometime in the future. But so you've got apparently Jews, Christians, and these people who were just believers, and it seems they were believers in in the Tawhid, shall we say, right, in the oneness of God, right? So they were a movement that believed in that, and the term Muslimin was adopted by the Almoravids, I think, in the 9th century. So you're talking 200 years after Muhammad. This idea of the Muslims came about by this grouping that just wanted to separate themselves and give themselves their own identity. And eventually, that term, the Muslims, the Muslimin, that eventually became the dominant name. Okay, and the Mu'minin became the minor name. Right, moving on. Amir al-Muslimin, a title which the Almoravids first assumed in contradistinction to the Amir al-Mu'minin, right? So the latter title, the Al-Mu'minin, was born by independent dynasties. The Almoravids recognized the supremacies of the Abbasids, and they didn't want to arrogate to themselves this title of the caliphs. So the caliphs were called the Al-Mu'minin. So the Moravids decided, okay, we'll just be the Muslimin. But eventually, the Muslimin became the title by which the whole group was known. So they established a kind of sub-caliphate with a title of their own, which was the Mu'minin. Don't forget the Mu'min, we know this as heretics. Okay? Just briefly, this slide is not finished, right? So Minin equals plural, min is singular. In the Hebrew, min is heretic. In the Arabic, a mu'min is a believer, right? Mu is just the prefix assigning the next word to the person, one who. So min is a heretic, which is a believer. Now remember, Adam, I said with the Hanif, right? With Hanif, the
Yes.
Christians and the Jews said the Muslims were Hanif. You are heretics, you are pagans. And they said, yes, we are heretics, we are pagans. Now notice the Jews are saying, you guys are heretics. And these guys are turning around and saying, yeah, we are this min, this heretic. Yeah, we're believers. We are the right believers. Do you see it's exactly the same process as happened with Hanif?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I'll get into this another time, but this slide's not finished yet, but I just wanted to bring that up. Now, Malik, the term Malik. So the term Abd al-Malik. Okay. So Malik, so once the term Mukarriba, the Yemeni term, fell out of fashion, and a new term replaced it, a new word called the Malik, M-L-K. The Malik meant king. Okay. It didn't necessarily mean a king, a human king, a person. It also meant a god. Like, for instance, the god Baal, right? For instance, right? That would be the king. And so someone, the Abd al-Malik, the servant of the Malik. Abd al-Malik is a title. It is not a name. Okay, we hear this a lot, the term used, Abd al-Malik. You would be Abd al-Malik, for instance, if Adam was a Malik, he'd be the Abd al-Malik Adam. I would be the Abd al-Malik Lloyd. My name would be
Slave,
attached.
yes, slave of the Malik, who is God. By the way, let me not just agree but show you the proof. In
Sure,
Quran,
sure.
chapter number 1, it says, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praises are for the Lord of of this universe. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Malik al-Yawmiddin. So there are two different readings of it. One reading is Malik al-Yawmiddin. The second reading is Malak al-Yawmiddin. According to
Mhm.
Tibri, it has to be according to Tibri, it has to be Malak al Yawmiddin, because the one who is the king by default is the owner, but the owner is not necessarily be the king, because the king can take the ownership of the guy who owns some land in his kingdom. So here the correct reading is Malak al Yawmiddin, not Malik al Yawmiddin. So in Quran chapter number 1, Allah is called Malik. That is why whenever you write the word Malik as your name, you have to say Abdul Malik, which means slave of Malik, means slave of Allah. Hence, I'm agreeing with you, brother, and showing you from the Quranic narrative that Malik
Thank you.
is basically God
Yeah, no,
of
that's
Islam.
fantastic. You're always able to corroborate what I'm saying. So understand, Abdul Malik is not a name. I know Jay Smith does talk about Abdul Malik a lot. Abdul Malik is a title. It is not a name. So it would have been Abdul Malik Marwan, Abdul Malik John, Abdul Malik Sally, right?
Mhm.
Understand, but it replaced the term Mukarriba. So now think about this. If you are the king, if you are the Malik, who are you the slave of? Well, you're not the slave of yourself, right? Now, the Abdul Malik, the slave of the Malik, would be someone who serves the Malik. So if the king had servants, they would be the Abdul Malik. They would be serving the king. If the king's name was James, then of course they're the Abdul Malik. They're the slaves of the Malik James, right? But if you were the king himself, who are you the slave of? Well, you're the slave of the god, right? And you would be the Abdul Malik of Baal, the Abdul Malik of sin, the Abdul Malik of the God that you serve. You are serving as the representative of that God on the earth. You are the warrior, priest, king. Understand? You are the warrior, king, priest. Understand that, right?
Absolutely.
So early in the first millennium BC, the political leaders, all the Maliks, okay, created a commonwealth occupying most of South Arabia. This was the Yemenis, right? They took the title Mukarrib, known as Mukarrib Sib, or Mukarrib of the Sabaeans, or the Mukarribs of Sabah, Sheba, the kingdom of Sheba. They're the Mukarribs, right? The Mukarraba. So all of these kings as a collective are the Mukarraba, right? The Mukarraba, Macoraba, right? There we go back to Ptolemy. He was talking about the Mukarraba, right? The kings of the Sabaeans, the people. Mukarriban was a special retainer of the ruler, someone who served the ruler. A Mukarrib, according to the Encyclopedia of Islam, means a unifier, someone who unifies. In ancient Yemen, a sovereign superior to the kings. So this is someone who is greater than the kings, like an emperor. He unites, he joins, he unifies. Okay, Mukarrib, unifier. Muhammad was a unifier by force, obviously by force of arms. He unified all the tribes. He joined all the tribes together under one banner, right? So many impressive buildings in southern Arabia were temples dedicated to pagan deities. The earlier rulers of Sabah or Sheba bore the title Mukarrib, which combined the functions of prince and priest. Muhammad was like royalty, and he was the priest. He was the warrior, priest, king. So this idea that Muhammad came up with is based on the history of what was Yemen. And when these guys invaded Arabia, they brought that same concept that he had to be a warrior king serving the god, right? A Mukarrib is a priest king, right? Because these moon gods were all war gods, you're talking warrior god. And the plural when romanized, I think very easily becomes Mukarraba, Macoraba. You see, Mukarraba, Macoraba. Adam, does that seem sensible to you?
Kind of, because you are connecting the two joints, and yeah,
Yeah, if
Mukarrib,
you're Greek
Mukarrib.
and you hear the term Macoraba, right, you're gonna Latinize it. You're gonna make it into your language. You're gonna convert it. And Mukarriba, Macoraba, those are very, very similar.
Yeah, so it will become Mukarrib, right? So Mukarrib is in Quran. If we see Mukarrib, it's like the one who is very near, close. That's the Quranic narrative. But the way you are describing it, man, that's Mukarrib of who? By the way, Allah says that you have to be Mukarrib of Him. By the way, and that's very very easy to see how Allah describes Mukarrib to be. I'm not
Right.
saying that.
We'll
That's
we'll
Allah
see
saying
more
that.
about that. Yeah. So let's look at ad, joining together. Okay, a contract, a written designation of succession left by a caliph from the time of the Umayyads. Okay, onwards. But then also, ad is a Quranic term meaning God's covenant with men, and he's talking about the believers, right? And then in law, ad is a political enactment, okay? Land which has capitulated before conquest. And then the same term, ad, uhud, joining together, a unifier. Understand? We spoke about the unifier, right? This is the same concept within the Islamic law, joining together the unifier. So political enactments, it's a political action, land which has capitulated before conquest. So it's a contract, it's a legal religious contract as well as ownership through conquest. Do you understand the context? This is very much what these guys believe. And in mysticism, Ahd is also the covenant, vows which vary. Okay, so that there's always these mystical terms related to Islam. But I wanted to mention that this is the very same, talking about the believers. The believers all adopted the idea that they had a political, religious, military purpose, right? So
Interesting.
Mukarrib, now we talk about Malik and Al Makkah. So you had the place of refuge, the inscription placed on the wall of the temple talks about the Mukarrib of Sabah who erected the wall of the house of Al Makkah. The Mukarribs all served Al Makkah. Okay, the Mukarribs all served Makkah, right? And then we talk about within the Quran, you have Al Sabikun, the foregoers. These are people who went before, people who came before, right? Basically the descendants of the Prophet, the ones who carried his authority. And the term derives from the Quran, right? This would be 56 verses 10 to 11. Well, Sabikun al Sabikun Ulekam Mukarribun. So this is actually within the Quran. Okay. When it says here, apparently, how could we not be superior to the angels since we preceded them? And this is in relation to Muhammad, apparently. So the ones who served, the Mukarribs who served Allah, are superior to the angels because they preceded them. So this is one of the sources. Sabaknahum, in the knowledge of our Lord, because this is where Muhammad's deity also starts to come from. We see within the Sirah, Muhammad becomes a deity. Your thoughts, Adam?
Wow,
So notice that.
this is particularly very deep, very deep, because Quran actually talks about Mukarrib in a couple of places. One of the place is that when they will be given a drink, biha al Mukarribun. Let me just show you. I'm already there. This is very interesting, by the way. By the way, they have to translate it in a different way, but I'm going to show you that this actually goes to drink of their God. You will recognize in their faces the radiance of the pleasure. Like Allah is talking about the ones who will go to heaven. They'll be given the drink pure wine and seal, and the last of
Mhm.
it is musk and etc, and it's mixture of tasneem. Let's talk about tasneem some other days. And then he says alaina, and from ainan, sorry, not alaina, ainan, a spring, right? Yashrab, that you will drink from, biha, from it. So a spring from which you will drink, al mukarribun, drink of what? Allah, of their God. But they have to say Mukarribun, the one who are near. But it's a drink of Allah that He has made a spring. So if I go by the way you are describing it, it also fits in the Quranic narrative of Quran chapter number 83, verse number 28,
Interesting.
because that's the place where Allah is going to give drinks with His own hands. If you go by every scholar, you will realize that in the Jannah they will be given drink. Allah will be giving them drinks with his own hands. Many of the hadiths, I will not show them right now over here, but let's look at 56:10 to 11, which you showed. And it says the fortuners, and the fortuners, like the one who are very fortunate, they go all the way up. Those are the ones who, ulaika, those are the ones, al mukarribun, of the God that they worship. So man, it's very clear, because like otherwise you have to put brought near to Allah in the brackets. You have to put to Allah to but the Arabic doesn't have Allah in here. It says are the
Well,
mukarribuns.
because the Mukarribun served Al Makkah, the moon god.
Yeah. So man, you thank you
They're,
so
they're
very
the ones
much.
who were near to Al Makkah. The Mukarribun are the ones. So now you've got this other word in the Quran, Mukarribun, and they served Al Makkah, the moon god. Just go back to my screen so everyone can see that now. Notice when you talk about this is the prayer you say when you circumambulate, when you go around and counterclockwise around the Kaaba. There's a rain spout. In one section of the Kaaba, there's this little rain spout, and as you go around it, you say, "Give me to drink from the cup of your Prophet Muhammad, after which I will never thirst."
Yeah,
Now I
that's
know
another
this is
thing.
the Quran, but
Yeah, let me
this is also in the Bible in John 4:14 or John 14:4 that he who drinks from my cup will never thirst. Jesus says
but,
this. So
but
this
that's a
is really
spiritual
Muhammad.
but brother, that's a spiritual one, but here Muhammad made it a physical one. So in the afterlife, Allah is going to give Muhammad a spring. So by the way, by when you have the day of resurrection, the sun will be very, very close to you, very, very close to you. Approximately, Savan is a 1.25 of a sphere length. By the way, I don't know how sun can come so close that it will be 1.25 sphere length, but forget that. So everyone will be very, very hot, and they will be very, very thirsty, like a thirsty crow, right? You know the thirsty crow, the story thirsty crow. And then Muhammad has been given Hauz al Kausar, the Surah Kausar in Quran. Inna atayna kal
Yeah, now
Kausar
Kauthar
fasalli
is also
rabbika
the
wan.
name of a pagan god, an
Okay,
Arabian
please,
pagan deity.
please don't go there. Hold on. Let me finish the story. Hey, man, every other thing is a pagan god in Quran, man. That's just so unbelievable.
Right.
Okay, so all the people who are Mukarribun, right? They who are Muslimin, pure Mu'mins, Muhammad will give them the water from that well. And after drinking the water from that well of Kausthar, they will never thirst. So go back to your previous slide, brother. So here,
Uh,
when they circulate the Kaaba, when they say this, they are referring to that Hose Kausar, which is a literal water, because Muhammad did not
the
had any
Macabre.
sons. Yeah, Muhammad did not had any son. So Allah supposedly gave him the Hode Kausar. Oh Muhammad, there you go, have Hode Kausar. We are not going to give you any son. And this is literal. It's in literal meaning. But when Jesus said, drink from my cup, he is not talking about the literal cup and the literal water. Like, that's how stupid it is. Muhammad did not know jack about what he is saying. He just mixed
Right.
everything. I'm
Exactly.
sorry to
So
divert
now, cool.
the.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's finish off this. I want to finish up because it's
Yeah,
after
it's
1
pretty
a.m.
late.
for me here. So guys, so I wanted to talk about this Mukarrib thing, right? Because the Mukarribs, which is mentioned in the Quran, as Adam has demonstrated as well, it's very much these are people who follow the god Makkah, right? These Mukarrabs specifically follow the god Makkah. Within the Quran, that is taken straight out of this Yemeni Sabaean belief, this Babylonian belief. So these people were led by Mukarrab, a sovereign superior to the king. So Muhammad believed he was superior to everyone on earth. He is superior to the kings. His name is a unifier, okay? The Tawhid, the unity, and all that. And of course, the building of this temple of Al Makkah, the great god of the Sabaeans. So these guys would have they would worship the god Al Makkah, Al Muk, right? Makkah, right there. So you've got that. So these guys, the Mukarrabs, are strictly and specifically in Yemen related to their worship of Al Makkah and the temples of Makkah, right? So in South Arabia, there was the kingdom of Sheba, capital at Marib, okay? And the leader of the tribal confederation, right? He believed he had to unify all the tribes, which he did, right? He was given the title Mukarrib, okay? And so there you go. So I just wanted to mention that this whole idea of the Mukarrib, eventually, we'll talk more about this, becomes the Malik, right? And the Malik
Wow.
has to do war. He is the religious military king, right? So these are priest kings, these are federators. They have to join everything. In the 4th century, the title Mukarrib, the Mukarraba, right, which is where we get the term, I believe, Macoraba from. So the Mukarraba, because that's the plural of Mukarrib, Mukarrib, Macoraba, right, which is Macoraba on Ptolemy's map, which is in Yemen, right? And the title was replaced by Malik or king. Now, I'll pause here for a moment, but I will let you know.
By the way, just to let you know,
Yeah.
Mukarrib, you use the other kind of a calf. That is a calf with a dash. You should use the calf with two dots. So there are two types of calf and calf. Depending on
Okay.
how, the
Yeah,
pronunciation
with
is
the
a little
Yemeni,
different.
it would be ka, but in Arabic, it would be ka.
Yeah, so with a calf with the two dots on the
So,
top.
so the term Malik, also the term MLK, while it does mean king, it also means Moloch.
Oh no, no
Okay,
kidding, no kidding.
it also means Moloch, and we all know who Moloch is, right? I don't have to talk
Yeah, the
about.
one people were worshipping and sacrificing their sons on his hand while burning
So
wood
Moloch
underneath
has
him.
different names. Okay, Moloch. Now look, I'll go into this in the future. We'll pause here tonight, but
Wow.
when you look at Moloch, okay, the god Moloch, right? This was the god Moloch. Okay,
Yeah,
so Moloch is related to Baal. Moloch is related to all of these pagan gods. Okay, so the term Malik, Abdal Malik, the slave of the Malik, could also mean the slave of Moloch.
crazy. Wow. That is
Okay,
that is just absolute craziness, brother, over here. Wow, I'm amazed.
Yeah.
That
So I will go into more of that another time, but we'll talk about some of that. But I actually do mention Baal and Moloch in these
I think
notes.
we
I mean,
can
I
we
will
can
get
start we can start next time from Ball and Malik because it's already over two and a quarter
yeah.
hours
No,
of
because
our
look,
live
for
stream.
instance, Quran 84, okay, you've got
Yeah.
Al-Mulk. You've got a chapter called MLK, which can mean the king, but it doesn't mean the human king. It can mean the king, the god king. But Malik specifically was Moloch or Molech, right? Who was this god they sacrificed children to. So Malik, oddly enough, specifically refers to this pagan deity.
Hmm. Crazy as it can sound.
Yeah,
But
just all
guys,
of these connections, all of these pagan connections. It's just crazy that they've taken all these words that have pagan connections.
there are so many, it's unbelievable. By the way, Malak is in the so every Muslim actually recites Surah Fatiha 17 times every day if they only recite the five Farad prayers. If they recite the Sunnahs and the Nawafil as well, it goes up to 70 plus times. And
And
they
then,
talk about Malak. Allah
yeah,
is the
right.
Malak.
And who happens to also be Moloch, right? Or Moloch or Malik. So it doesn't necessarily mean that, so he could be the god that is the king that they serve, right? And then also Allah happens to be the Lord of Sirius, right? Sirius, the main. Now remember, when we talked about the Kaaba before, right? When we talked about the Kaaba and them going around the Kaaba here represents Sirius, right? And they go counterclockwise around Sirius the way the stars go counterclockwise around Sirius, because Allah is the Lord of Sirius,
Let me show you
right? And
something else. You know what
there's
Sirius is
connections to Sirius as well.
yeah,
Yeah,
according to you, what is Sirius? Sirius is a pagan god, right?
the pole star. Well, it also happens to be a pagan god. Yeah, and
Yeah,
unfortunately, it also happens to turn out to be a pagan god. Yeah.
exactly. So check this out. Let me give you evidence that Muslims actually agree with you. For the first time, Muslims do agree with you. It says the Rab of Shara, the Sirius, right? Now look at one footnote. A
Well,
star worshipped by some of the pagan Arabs.
yeah, I know. Let me show you. Let me show you what I've got there. So let me stop here. So, so this guy, the Lord of Sirius. Okay, remember we said that Allah. So Allah was the name of Al Makkah. Makkah, I say, is probably the name where Makkah comes from, right? Makkah was
Hmm.
the temples where they served the god Al Makkah, right?
Hmm.
Right. This is Makkah. Now Makkah was also known as Sin, and who is the Lord of Sirius? Well, he happens to be Sin, the moon god.
It's just like Yasin, because Ya simply means in Arabic, Ya means oh. For example, you said, "Oh God." When you have to say "Oh God," you have to say Ya Allah, right?
Well,
Yasin means Yasin. So Ya means
yeah,
oh, sin is the you are already saying.
there you go. Oh, human being. They say they don't know what it means, but it means Ya sin. Now notice Ya is also the original root of the term Ya, which this is a Semitic root. We have Yahweh, okay? And there are numerous moon gods also called Ya. Understand? There are Babylonian and Egyptian and other gods whose their name has Yah in it. Yah. But Allah is Yahweh, right? So you've got Yah, which originally in the Babylonian context is a moon god, and Sin, who was the father of the moon gods, the main gods, Yah, Sin. And the Islamic scholars say we have no idea what that means, but both of these are the names of pagan moon gods.
By the way, Ibn Kathir actually writes in his tafsir, which you will not find in the English, but in
I
the
have it right
Arabic,
here. Oh, sorry, no.
yeah, in
Okay, yeah,
Arabic, he
sorry.
actually says that according to the Yemeni language, Yasin means ya insan. Insan means human.
It means?
Human. Let me see.
Yeah,
Let me
Insan al
open that.
Kamil is the perfect man. But yeah,
Yeah.
okay, well, so true, but I think that's guessing because we know who Sin is and we know who Yah is. Yah is a moon god. Okay, Yah happens to be a moon god.
Moon god.
The
Yeah.
Egyptians called him Iyah. Okay, but he was also called La in at least one reference. He's called La, but he's called Iyah as well. He's the Egyptian moon god. So it's all moon gods. All of them are moon gods. I'll stop here. I think I'm done for the night. I need to go. But hopefully, guys, you see all these connections, these pagan connections from Egypt, Babylon, Canaan, Sumeria, you name it. All of these things. And the Arabian moon gods were all of them Babylonian moon gods. They copied the Babylonian moon gods, and so all of these terms, all of this history, all of it is originally from the Babylonian pagans, and it went to Yemen, and then it went into Arabia.
Yeah, let me show you what Ibn Kathir is saying as well, because some scholars actually knows what it means. Let me show you. This is 36:1, Surah Yasin, verse number 1, Tafsir Ibn Kathir, Arabic. You will not find it in English. This part they do not translate in Arabic. And it says, Warawi an Ibn Abbas, according to the statement of Ibn Abbas, Raziyallahu anhuma, wa Akrama, and according to Akrama, was Sahak, and according to Sahak, wa Hassan, was Sufyan bin Abina, and according to Sufyan, an Yasin, that Yasin, Bama'ana ya insan, that it means, O insan, O perfect human being. Wakala Said bin Jurair, and according to Said bin Zarir, who kazalika fil lughat al Habasha. This is according to the lughat or the language of Habasha. And then he
Mm-hmm.
says, Wakala Malik, and according to Malik, and Zaid bin Aslam, and according to Zaid bin Aslam, Hua, that is Isma min, which is the name of Allah Ta'ala. And so you have to pick one. So if you have to pick one, it's up to you. They are saying the both thing. It is one of the name of Allah Ta'ala, or means Allah the God, or it is a word from the Habasha, which means oh human being. So they actually know both. So Yasin, sin is the name of Allah, and sin is a pagan deity. Thank you so very much. Allah is a pagan deity. MashaAllah.
Okay, very
See?
interesting. So tell you what, let me finish 2 slides, and then I have to call it a night, guys. I really gotta
Yes, sir.
go. Okay, so let me show you guys. So now, when I say the Lord of Sirius, I'm not saying that Allah is Sirius. Okay, that is not necessarily the case. The Lord of Sirius. So Sirius is one of the major deities, but he's not the major deity. Sirius is a star god. The star gods generally are considered to be the children, the offspring of the moon and the sun god. Now, in most civilizations, the sun was the male and the moon was the female. But in Babylon, the moon was the male, the sun was the female, and guess where else that was the same case? Well, in Arabia. So in Arabia, the moon was the male, the sun was the female, and they had kids, and they would have the stars as children. All right.
MashaAllah. The
So
stars
so
were children. Oh man, that's
so
crazy.
Sirius is also known as Al Shira. Okay, Al Shira. Okay. So what you've got is here. He learns that I already have that, a star worship by some ancient pagan, Sirius. So Sirius is a star god. He's a secondary god. After the moon, then the sun, then the stars, right? Then the lower gods, right? So moon, sun, stars, right? So the Lord, so Sirius is below sin. He's a god underneath sin. So who did Sirius be? Whose pantheon was he part of? Well, he was the part of the pantheon of sin. Allah, in this case, this verse says, if you read it literally, it says, Allah is the Lord of Sirius, and the Lord of Sirius was the moon god, the Babylonian moon god, Sin. Okay, so the Lord above Sirius was the Babylonian moon god Sin, and it says here, Allah is the Lord of Sirius. Okay, that's very, very clear. Okay, so Sin was the head of this pantheon, and Sirius was below him, and Allah is above Sirius. So Allah is Sin. Quite literally in this verse in the Quran, it says, now I want to mention Göbekli Tepe again. Last slide, and I'm done. The world's oldest temple. So according to this New Scientist article, apparently Göbekli Tepe was built to worship the star Sirius. Göbekli Tepe apparently seems to have been built as worship of the star Sirius, the god Sirius. So new research has revealed that the world's oldest known temple, Göbekli Tepe in southern Turkey, was probably built to worship the star Sirius. Göbekli Tepe is at least 12,000 years old. Okay, now I have shown you guys before that there are dozens and dozens of Göbekli Tepe temples. Okay, I've shown you 19 of them previously. Okay, let me just find that slide, guys. So that here we go. I have shown you before that this is 19 of them on this map, and apparently there are dozens of temples, all for the worship of this god, the star god Sirius. Now understand, I said, remember, Muhammad and his friends were looking for the original religion of Abraham. Okay, so now you've got Allah is Sin. Okay, Göbekli Tepe, which was right there where Abraham was born, happens to be to the star god Sin. Can you make the connection, Adam?
I really do not have to make any connection. You already did that. You already did that, and we showed that it is in Quran as well.
But you
So
understand? So now you've got Allah is above. So Allah is sin, and He's above the star god Sirius. So now, I mean, if you start looking at these temples, they knew these temples existed. They knew of these old gods. So yeah, guys, you guys look. I mean, please to have a flowchart connecting all of these gods. Jackie A, I wish I did, man. It's so confusing when you look at these. They have different names and they swap genders sometimes. The male becomes female, and they're very similar. Like sometimes a god can have they have 20 different gods, but it's actually the same god. But the one guy connects, he likes the gods that give him water, and the other guy likes the god that gives him fruit. But it's the same god, and they're just emphasizing one of the characteristics. What Muhammad did is what the Quran says, and what Muhammad did was he took all of these characteristics. So the 99 names of Allah are basically the 99 gods and the 99 attributes of all these gods and whatnot, and he rolled them into one God and called it Allah. And that Allah, and the Quran accuses him of that. The Quran literally accuses Muhammad of doing that, of smushing them all into one and saying, "Oh, it's Allah now."
exactly, Quran very clearly says, what have you done, O Muhammad? Have you combined all gods into one God? That is Quran
Yeah,
38:5.
yeah.
38:5, and they say that you have done a very strange thing. Let me show you so that your words
Yeah.
will be
I will have a
authenticated.
table of the gods later on. I will have a table to go through some of them at least. So I'll try and sort that out.
Yeah,
Thanks,
let me
guys.
just, yeah. And this is what Quran is saying. Has he made the gods,
الآلهة
all the gods, ilahan wahid, into one God? Indeed, this is a curious thing. Definitely, inna haza la shay'un ujabun.
عجاب
So basically, Quran actually alludes that the people are saying to Muhammad, "Hey Muhammad, what are you doing? You are just combining the gods into one God. But
Yep.
basically, you worship all of these gods, but you are just combining all these gods into one God." So what
Yeah.
you're saying here is, Quran is actually agreeing with you
Yeah.
110%.
Yeah. No, I cover this as well later on. I mean, so yeah, guys. Just to answer your question, Jackie, this is a table of ancient deities found in the Middle East. The sun. You have Alat Shams. Okay, you've heard of Alat before. Allah Ta'ala. They still say this today. Okay, for the moon, they still say this today. But Allah Ta'ala was not about Allah. It was about Sin, the moon god, the most high god, Sin, the moon god, known as Al Makkah. So Allah Ta'ala, what they say today, it was said about Sin then. And the moon god was Sin was also known as Allah, right? And you can see here, you've got the Mercury, Mercurius, Hermes. He was called different names in Arabia. Atarid, Atare, okay? Nebo, Astarte, it's all the same god, Nabu, and Helel. Okay, this is the crescent moon. Helel is the crescent moon. The Arabic, it's not just Uzzah, there's many names, more names than this, many more. So Hillel is Hilal, Hilal. That is the crescent moon. That's considered the god of Islam, the crescent moon god. And there were many names for the moon god as well. There were many to describe different phases of the moon. Ishtar, Athar. Athar is also a name that is used here. So yeah, this table hopefully helps you out. So guys, I got to call it a night. It's late. It's 1:30 in the morning. Adam, thank
Thank
you
you
very much.
so
I
very
hope
much.
this was enlightening for everyone. And Thaddeus, thanks for the very interesting feedback. We shall chat tomorrow.
Amen. Thank you so very much, brother, for being here, and for showing giving your time and showing your research to
Oh,
everyone.
yep. So guys, yeah. I mean, just a note from Thaddeus, but Tawhid. What does Tawhid mean? Unification, right? Tawhid comes. It's stolen from the Ethiopian, okay, but it means to unify. So what did he do? He unified. He just took all the gods and just smashed them into one. Tawhid.
Wow, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so very much, guys. Guys, remember one thing. Today I had far less live viewers than there usually are. It means that my channel is probably shadow banned, as you know, Pakistan is banning my video left, right, and center. So it is one of your duties that whenever I schedule a live stream, it is upon you guys to share it in your social media platform. Seems like you have not done that today. I've been saying that we are giving you the time and our research and our information. Your job is to share it. That's the best support that you can do, to share it. Even though that you have not, if you have not shared it right now, share it now so that the people could watch it later. Share it in YouTube, share it in WhatsApp, share it in Facebook, share it in Twitter. Share these videos. That's the best support that you can do for us, because this information needs to go everywhere. I need to see more people watching this. This is a deep study, a huge deep study by our brother Lloyd. He has gone through many books to give you this information. It is not a day job that he did, it is a job of years that he did. Brother Lloyd, thank you so very much for being here. Any last words before I
Welcome.
end the stream, brother?
No, thank you guys. I hope all this was coherent and made sense. Obviously, we don't have video of that time. We don't have a signed confession, but hopefully you can see all of these connections, these words that mean the same thing, these words that sound the same, these words that are all connected. You can just see all these links and all these gods. I mean, it's just all the same, and you can see that this is clearly all this evidence just points in one direction only.
And that
So
is the
yeah, that's it
pagan
for me. Thank
deities.
you, guys.
Thank you so very much, guys. Have a blessed day, evening, or night, wherever you are. Thank you. And Yeshua
Akbar
Akbar
al-Azim.
Azim.